Hello, hockey fans, and welcome back with our fourth and final part of this series, looking at the great career of Bobby Clarke. If you haven't seen the first three parts, check them out right now. Links are in the description. But where we left off, Bobby has just completed his 10th season. He has done it all. Won championships, 2 as a matter of fact. Won major individual accolades, been successful and highly keen in the rise of international competition, coming up through North America, and winning championships on that level as well. But above all, he has gone from a junior star that was practically ignored, taken by a team with little direction, and evolved into one of the best players, biggest stars, hardest workers, amazing playmakers, and tried and true leader in the league. Under Clarke's leadership and stardom, the Flyers made history. His contribution to expansion hockey cannot be refuted, as the game shifted past the original 6, and the Flyers were put on the map thanks to this man, as they were the first expansion club to reach 100 points in a season. Clarke himself became the first player on an expansion team to score 100 points in a season. They were the first team to eliminate an original 6 team in the playoffs. And of course, were the first expansion team to win a Stanley Cup, and they did it again the following year, where they were the first expansion club to have the league's best record, and won the Cup final with the Sabres, which was the first to feature 2 expansion clubs. This all happened with Clarke guiding and leading the way, not just using his stardom, but many other aspects to make sure his team was successful. Surrounded by stars such as Bill Barber and Reggie Leach, they formed the LCB line. Other stars such as Rick McLeish, Gary Dornhofer, along with Don Selesky, Bob Kelly, Dave the Hammer Schultz up front as well, along with character players such as Bill Clement, Norris Kinderchuk, and a nasty defense with Andre the Moose Dupont, Watson brothers, and the late Barry Ashby, and Tom Bladden. Backstopping it all was star goaltender Bernie Perron, and the coach who molded them into winners and helped give them the name the Broad Street Bullies and helped them build that reputation was Freddie the Fog Shiro. The string of Stanley Cups, however, came to an end when losing to the Montreal Canadiens in the 1976 finals as the Habs kicked off their new dynasty. And their string of cup appearances came to an end in 1977 when losing to the Bruins in the semifinals. A year later in 1978, they lost the division title for the first time in 4 seasons, and to a rising club known as the New York Islanders. But Clarke played very well with each passing year, always among the top 10 in overall points and consistent league leaders in assists. But many players had gone, a new crop had arrived, and Fred Shiro parted ways with Philly as he felt the organization was too stuck in their ways. And he went for a new venture in the New York Rangers as their GM and their coach. The 1978-79 season, Clarke's 10th, was one of the most bizarre of his, and for that matter, the whole team in this era. Clarke's offensive numbers took a bit of a dive, but that doesn't mean he was playing bad by any stretch of the imagination. It was the first time he failed to average a point a game since his second season, and failed to reach 20 goals for the first time since his rookie season. Many felt that his knee issues that had caused him to miss 9 games the year prior caused him to slow down. The team, oddly enough, went on a 9-game winless streak in January that resulted in new head coach Bob McCannon already being fired. Former nasty defenseman Pat Quinn took over at age 36, a move that had several skeptics speaking. But the team showed improvement and finished with 95 points, which did end their streak of 5 straight 100-point seasons. But then they faced former coach Shiro and the New York Rangers in the quarterfinals, and were completely and utterly embarrassed, humiliated, destroyed in 5 games. Clarke was pointless at a -11, including a dreadful -6 in the Game 5 alone. It was cited as one of the worst moments of his career, and ended the Flyers' streak of 6 straight semifinals appearances. Yes, the Flyers were still a good team, but when you see a small steady decline like this, you know it can only get worse. If nothing changes, that is. And the game is changing. As we get ready to head into the 1980s for the 1979-80 season, the WHA, the rival hockey league, had ceased operations. But the NHL decided to take on 4 of their franchises: the Edmonton Oilers, the Winnipeg Jets, Quebec Nordiques, and the New England, now known as the Hartford Whalers. They expanded the league to 21 teams. The game was truly going to kick into high gear in this scoring era. But as for the Flyers, they've watched the Habs pass them. Even the Bruins have passed them, and in some ways the Islanders have too. Divisions were realigned a little bit, and the Capitals were added along with the Flyers, Islanders, Rangers, and Flames in the Patrick Division. Also, the playoffs will feature a new format. With the top 16 teams in the league, 1 to 16 seeded format, will all make the playoffs. But as I mentioned at the end of the last video, Clarke isn't just going to sit down and take this. At this point, he wasn't concerned about winning scoring titles or anything like that anymore. He cared about his team. He cared about winning. He cared about their future. He took a big step in the offseason, as the loss to the Rangers made him really rethink his approach to the game. So much so he went to GM Keith Allen and offered to work side by side with head coach Pat Quinn as an assistant coach while still playing. But that meant under league rules, because this has been done a few times before, that he'd have to relinquish his captaincy of the team, which he did with very little hesitation, handing it over to Mel Bridgman, who was very well respected by his teammates and has evolved into an excellent young hockey player himself. Keith Allen knew things had to change, but still felt Clarke, along with Leach and Barber, were going to be key going forward. Rick McLeish is also a very heavy remnant from their Stanley Cup days and is still heavily productive. Sophomore Kenny the Rat Linsman was going to start playing a bigger role. Paul Holmgren embodied the Broad Street bully spirit and contributes to them heavily, and new captain Mel Bridgman has what it takes to be a leader. Bob Kelly is now in his 10th season and is still a big-time fan favorite. Also, Dennis Ververger, Al Hill, and Tom Gorentz are helping the lower line depth, but the Flyers had a new rookie prospect, Lanigan, Saskatchewan native Brian Propp, who was taken 14th overall in the infamous 1979 NHL entry draft. And he was a part of the dominant Brandon Wheat Kings the year prior. Again, many great players were drafted from that class. On defense, Jimmy Watson and Andre Moose DuPont remained from their Cup days, but sophomore Ben Wilson and Big Bob Daly still had a lot of substance. Norman Barnes, who's been in the Flyer system since 1973, finally gets a shot at the big time after being big in those 2 Calder Cup wins for the Maine Mariners in the AHL. And same for Mike Busnick, as Quinn likes sizable defenders, and Busnick has 3 Calder Cup rings. But the big question was in goal. The fact is the Flyers had to face facts that Bernie Perron wasn't coming back and his career was over, due to a sad career-ending injury that happened a year prior, that nearly left him blind in one eye. And it left them with Wayne Stephenson, who was an excellent goaltender in many games, but became a headache for Flyers management and was actually traded to lowly Washington. But Allen parted with Rick LaPointe and Blake Dunlop to St. Louis for veteran goalie Phil Meyer, who has 117 wins. But they also had a prospect in a rookie by the name of Pete Peters, who, like some of his new teammates, was part of those 2 big Maine Mariners championships. Some felt this was a good sign that Flyers were finally shaking things up a bit. Another big shake, the LCB line might be split apart for a bit this season, but others felt the glory was truly gone, and that this pack of, quote, washed-up veterans and minor leaguers and rookies and beer leaguers are going to make a dent. Well, Clarke has even more pressure on him now, but as these past videos have dictated, he has thrived on that more often than not. Will this year be the same? Well, hey, what a way to start the season with their rivals, the New York Islanders, who are coming off having the league's best record the prior season, but their playoff woes had still continued. Clarke, within the CNS jersey for the first time after 7 seasons, went into the faceoff circle with superstar Brian Trottier, last year's MVP, kicking off the season. And with the Flyers leading 2-0 in the second period, Leach gets it to Bobby, who gets it to Brian Propp for his first career NHL goal to take a 3-0 lead, and Myra's great net in his debut as a Flyer, and the message is sent to the Isles on this opening night, a huge 5-2 win. And then 2 days later, it was off to Atlanta to face the Flames, who were coming off their best season ever, but still can't win a playoff series. They are led by stars Guy Schwinard, Bob McMillan, and new Swedish import Kent Nilsson, who just won the AFCO Cup in the WHA with the Winnipeg Jets. The Flyers were humiliated, 9-2. Meyer was lit up for all goals. Clarke did not play well. He's a -2. And the critics were quick to come out for this one. Sometimes, however, you need to keep your words soft and sweet because you might have to eat them later. Because what happened next was nothing short of remarkable. Things started simple enough at home against St. Louis, Salming Lanny and the Leafs. Clarke assisted on a Reggie Leach goal in a 4-3 win. He helped Leach out again as the Flyers got back at the Flames 6-2 at home. And then went on the road to beat the Dead Thing Red Wings 7-3 on the road. Clarke got 2 apples. Nice 3 straight wins for the Flyers. Then on October 21st, 1979, Clarke and the boys hosted the 4-time defending Stanley Cup champion Montreal Canadiens. Dryden, Cornway, Lemaire, and even Scotty Bowman are gone, but Lafleur, Shutt, and Robinson are still there. It looked great early. The Flyers led 4-0 early in the second, but the Habs got 2 back, and then 1:10 later, Bridgman gets it over to Leach, and Bobby Clarke gets his first goal of the year, making it 5-2. The Flyers let the lead slip, but either way, they hang on for a 6-6 tie. They finish out this 4-game homestand with 3 wins. And indeed, on October 25th, it was a personal game against former coach Fred Shiro, Phil Esposito, and the Rangers. The team that humiliated them in the playoffs. Well, the Flyers got the laugh here. And again, down 2-0. They scored 2 goals 2 minutes apart and in the second period. Then, latter of which, Bobby and Barnesy set up Reggie. In the third, the Flyers took control, and in the third, we're leading 4-2 with just about 5 minutes to play. Reggie to Brian to Bobby Clarke, who puts John Davidson down with the goal in a 5-2 win. A goal, a helper, and a +4 helped hold Espo to no points and a -2. Then it was a surprisingly thrilling game against the Detroit Red Wings. The Flyers were leading 3-2. In the third, when Daly, Clarke set up Reggie to make it 4-2, but the Wings caught up. But with just 1 minute to play, Clarke and plus Daly set up Reggie again. Big 5-4 win. 4 points in the last 2 games for our hero. Then Bernie Federico, Brian Sutter, and the rebuilding Blues came to town to start November. Flyers win 3-1. Clarke played very well here. It was a +1. But then came another showdown with the 4-time Cup champs, this time on the road at the Forum, as the Flyers take their 7-game unbeaten streak into Montreal on November 3rd, and doing so on Hockey Night in Canada. And midway through the first period, power play, Clarke to Barber to Mel Bridgman. And the Flyers strike first. They did trail 2-1 after 2 periods, but came alive and produced a huge 5-2 win on the road in Montreal. Suddenly the experts aren't too hard on this Flyers team anymore. Now unbeaten in 8. And hey, this seems somewhat familiar. The Flyers extended to 10 games without a loss. First at home against the Sabres, led by Perreault, now coached by Scotty Bowman. Clarke assists on Holmgren's insurance marker in a 3-1 win. Then for the first time ever, they visit Le Colisée in Quebec City and get a 4-3 win over Real Cloutier and the expansion Nordiques. Clarke had an assist in the win. Then on November 10th, the Flyers went to Long Island to visit a shockingly struggling Islanders club. This is the team that had been knocking on their doors for years now, and as well as the Habs and Bruins, but there's just one problem. The Flyers aren't quite ready to leave yet, and the Islanders still haven't even been to a Stanley Cup, let alone won one. The Flyers led 1-0 in the second period when Buznick got the puck up towards the Islanders' zone, and even Chico Resch does not stand a chance. Bobby sets up Reggie. 2-0 Flyers, leading 4-2 late in the game. It's Leach to Prop to Clarke. 5-2 win. A goal, a helper, and a +3. After an assist and a 5-4 win over the Canucks at home on November 15, 1979, Clarke welcomed the Edmonton Oilers, another one of the WHA expansion clubs. And the hype was around this 18-year-old scrawny kid from Brantford, Ontario, who was making waves by the name of Wayne Gretzky. Gretzky modeled a lot of his strategy after Bobby Clarke, something he has said several times years since. And that his dad was actually a key component in that regard in terms of making sure you're where the puck is going to be. The two engaged in a face-off circle several times, Clarke many times schooling the youngster, but Gretzky showing no intimidation to his credit. Teenage Phenom had 2 assists and was a -1. Bobby had a helper on Reggie Leach's 13th goal this season, and indeed, this brings the Flyers' unbeaten streak to lucky number 13 with a 5-3 win over the Oilers. And Bobby is also silencing a lot of naysayers. Up next for the Flyers, however, was a 4-game road trip. First in St. Louis, it looked like this hot streak was going to come to an end, as the Flyers trailed 2-0 in the third, but eventually tied it. And then, poor Mike Liut. Bobby to Brian to Reggie. The Flyers lead 3-2, but have to settle for a 3-3 tie here. Then it was off to LA to face red-hot Marcel Dion, Dave Taylor, and the LA Kings. They were down 2-0, but Clarke and McLeish set up Leach to get them on the board en route to a 6-4 win. Then it was off to Vancouver, and while leading 2-1 in the second period, a short-handed combo reemerges. While killing a penalty, Barber takes a loose puck going in on goal. He scores, Bobby! Yes! 3-1 Flyers. Clarke assists on a Brian Prop goal, made it 4-2 en route to a 5-2 win. A goal, a helper, and a +3. He meets up with Gretzky again, this time in Edmonton. Clarke had a rougher outing this go-round. He was pointless, but an even 0. The Flyers did blow a 2-0 lead, but still got the tie. So with that road trip in the books, the Flyers are now unbeaten in 17 games. Is Clarke about to see a 20-game unbeaten streak for the 3rd time in his career? This is insane, and he's playing superb hockey as well as the rest of this team. And then there was another WHA team. They'd be hosting the Hartford Whalers at home, and Bobby would face some familiar faces. He hadn't faced the all-time great Mr. Hockey Gordie Howe since January 31st, 1971. Howe has been in the WHA the prior 6 seasons, and no matter how old he got, he still won championships and individual awards. He's now 51 and still very productive, but was a -3. And Maple Leafs icon Dave Keon facing Bobby for the first time since April 19, 1975, which was Keon's last NHL game before returning this season. It was a playoff game to boot. He had an assist here and was a -2. And then there's Andre Lacroix, who was actually the top center in Philadelphia when Clarke arrived. And they played 2 seasons together. Since then, however, Lacroix has become one of the biggest stars in the WHA's history, and is actually the WHA's all-time leading scorer. He had a goal and a +1. But the Flyers made it 18 without a loss in this 6-2 win. Clarke had 2 assists, both to Leach, and was a +3. And indeed, the Philadelphia Flyers reached 20 games unbeaten for the 3rd time. After the victory over the Whalers, they beat a surprisingly good North Stars team full of young talent 6-4 at home. Clarke had an assist on a Reggie Leach shorthander. They settled for the 4-4 tie at Maple Leaf Gardens against the Leafs, where Clarke had a goal, which kicked off December. Another, 20-game unbeaten streak. Can you believe this? The Flyers joined the Habs as the only teams to have this happen 3 times. However, the record of 23 that they tied in 1975-76 and shared with the 1940-41 Bruins was broken by the Habs of 1977-78. A monster 28 games without a loss. The Flyers with his 20, however, tied their mark from 1976-77. How much further can this team go? Well, they had a nice 6-game homestand coming up. There were some close calls. They let a 2-goal lead slip late against the Red Wings, but still got the tie, which means they've now equaled the Habs of 74-75 and 76-77, and passing their mark from the that latter year. Then came another rival on December 4th, the Big Bad Bruins. While no longer coached by Don Cherry, the familiar faces are still there. Rattel, O'Reilly, Park, Cheevers, and new face, first-round draft pick, rookie sensation, defenseman Raymond Bourque. Speaking of Bourque, he scored one of the goals that put the Bruins up 2-0. But just past the midway point of the second period, while killing a penalty, Dupont clears it out to Clarke, who goes in on goal with Leach. Reggie scores. 1:08 later, it's a tie game. It stays tied, and the Flyers now pass the 2 marks in the Habs with 22 games without a loss. The first meeting between Bourque and Clarke was a doozy. Bourque had a goal and was a -1. Clarke's big assist and a +2 again in another Flyers point. And then they tie their mark from 1975-76 and that of the 1940-41 Bruins with a 9-4 win goal fest, beating the Kings. Clarke assisting on goals to Reggie Leach twice. Now a 3-way tie for second best winning streak of all time. And now the hockey experts and media are loving the Flyers again. Funny how that works sometimes. Well, Leach and Clarke set up prop for what looked to be the game winner, only for the Blackhawks to tie it with 50 seconds left, but still get the point. But on December 13th against Quebec, down 1-0 in the second period, 2:48 into the frame. Oh, poor Michel Dion. Bobo to Reg, it's a goal! 1-1 after 1, but a big scare hit as the Nords had a 3-1 lead. The Flyers tied at 3-3 with 1:51 to go. Clarke to Reggie. It's a goal! 4-3 Flyers, 6-4 win, 25-game unbeaten streak. I would even be willing to bet even the Flyers' biggest supporters who still had faith in this team that they would be good never would have imagined this. They are now just 3 wins or ties behind those dominant halves of 77-78. They've achieved a point against 16 of the 20 teams in the league. But can they do it? Their upcoming schedule features a red-hot Sabres team, the hit-or-miss Rangers, but again, last year still on everyone's mind. And they cap it off with facing their state rivals, a decent-looking Penguins team. So, here we go. December 15th, they host the Sabres at home. It's scoreless after 1 period. It's tied 1-1 after 2. The Sabres took a 2-1 lead early in the second, but Daly ties it. 2:17 later, McLeish scores the game-winning goal. 26 games unbeaten. The Habs have a little more company. But a rough game for our hero, but he keeps on going. The very next day, it's on the road against the Rangers, and there's nothing more this Rangers team would love to do than to humiliate them again. Barber scored on a short-handed goal in the first, but the Rangers would tie it on a power play. That was the only scoring of the game. Meyer and Steve Baker were the Rangers were the story of this outcome, and with great goaltending performances. But still, 27 games undefeated. 1 more to tie, 2 more to break. Clarke played excellently here. So here we go. December 20th, their state rivals, the Penguins, who are having a decent year compared to some that they've had recently. They're led by defenseman Randy Carlyle and star forward Rick Kehoe. There's nothing more that I'm sure that these hated rivals would love to do than to kill the Flyers' streak. Well, the Pens did strike first on a power play and led 1-0 after 1. And 2 periods. Pens goalie Greg Millen chooses to play the game of his life on this night and is making save after save. Past the midway point of the third period, still 1-0 Penguins. 5 minutes to go, still 1-0. This historic stretch is about to fall short. The Flyers are pressing on their 5th power play chance of this game, but the Rat gives it to Dennis, back to Ben Wilson, who scores. 4:08 to play, the Spectrum erupts. The game is tied. The game is tied. The Flyers hang on for the tie. The record is also tied. 28 games unbeaten. The Flyers of 1979-80, who many had already written off, have made history and are one possible winner tie from standing alone in the record books. In order to break the record, however, they must face the Boston Bruins at the famed Garden on December 22nd, 1979. This could mean history in the making. This Bruins club was still a top-tier contender, and it wasn't going to be easy to overcome. Phil Meyer starts for the Flyers in net. And nearly 6 minutes into the game, our hero strikes. He takes a loose puck, goes in on goal. Gilbert doesn't stand a chance. He scores, and he gets the Flyers out to a good start in this big game. Hey, things look good to start the second period. Linsman makes it 3-0 Flyers just 56 seconds into the frame. But the Bruins score 2 goals, 107 apart to cut the gap to 3-2, waking up the Garden crowd. But the Flyers silence the Beantown faithful just 30 seconds later when Watson gets a big goal, and the Flyers defense is on point, and Bobby has a good hold on Rattel. It's 4-2 after 2. Just 20 more minutes. They just need to hang on. In the third, the Flyers are doing everything they can to swarm the Bruins to make sure they get no momentum going, and it seems to be working. And then halfway through the frame, Bob Kelly scores. 5-2. Flyers just under 10 minutes to hang on. And they do. A new NHL record. 29 games unbeaten. The team that was a big question mark definitely had an answer for many of their critics, as nobody expected this to happen. But once again, like he has throughout his career, Bobby Clarke has helped the Flyers make history. Oh, but it didn't stop there. The next day, on December 23rd, they returned home to the Spectrum, getting a hero's welcome from their fans. But even with the record set, they didn't really relax. They didn't get lazy and extended the streak to 30 with a 4-2 win over the Whalers. Bobby was a +2. But coming up was a 6-game road trip. How much longer can they keep this thing going? Let's find out. First, it was off to Hartford to complete this home-and-home series on Boxing Day, and Clarke got an assist in a 4-4 tie. Now the streak is up to 31. He then assisted on goals to Reggie Leach and Ben Wilson in a 5-3 win in Winnipeg. Then it was off to Denver to face the Rockies of Colorado, which now featured former Leafs star Lanny McDonald and former Sabres star Rennie Robert. The Flyers won at 3-2. Clarke got an assist. 33 games without a loss. And the new decade of the 1980s was officially here, as on January 4th, 1980, the Flyers rang in the new year and the new decade with a 5-3 win over the Rangers. Then a 4-2 win over the powerful Sabres on the road. 35 games unbeaten. Wow. Well, the final game of the road trip was against the Minnesota North Stars, who are no longer the sucky Stars. They're actually really good this year, thanks to their new crop of young talent such as Bobby Smith, Steve Payne, and defenseman Craig Hartsburg, as well as veteran Al McAdam. And in net, they had the highly talented season vet Joe Meloche. It looked good early. Bill Barber scored to make it 1-0, but the Stars completely decimated Phil Meyer. The Flyers lose 7-1. A shocking turn of events, but indeed, the streak is over. But wow. 35 games without a loss as a 2024. Still an NHL record and a North American sports record. 25-0-10. Once again, Bobby Clarke taking the initiative to keep this team going and making them better as they go along. His turn as assistant coach seems to be making a difference. And on this streak, he played magnificent. Literally averaged a point a game with 6 goals, 29 assists for 35 points, and a +30. Wow. The Flyers, however, did get a hero's welcome when they returned home in a win over Winnipeg, but then they lose the Habs on the road. Then they went on an 11-game unbeaten streak to finish January going into February. Bobby had 2 goals, 6 assists for 8 points in 14 games in January and was a +7. In February, Bobby looked sharp, and so did the Flyers, only losing 2 games all month. Clarke had a goal, 9 assists for 10 points in 10 games, and was a +3. He began the month with an assist to win over the Penguins, and then the next game assist on a Rick McLeish goal with 16 seconds left to tie the Bruins. A couple games later, he assisted on Paul Holmgren's game-winning goal against the Red Wings, and then had 2 assists on February 10th in a 5-2 win over the Kings. A week later, he had 2 helpers in an exciting 6-5 comeback win over the Penguins. Then after missing a game, he had a goal and a helper in a 7-3 win on the road over Vancouver. He finished the month with an assist and a win over the Kings. Well, the Flyers did struggle a bit at the end of the season, but our hero played some great games. After a 4-game scoreless drought, he had a goal and an assist in a 6-2 win over the Stars on March 8th on the road. And then the very next day against Gretzky and the Oilers, assist on 2 Reggie Leach goals in a 5-3 win. He then made it 5 points in 3 games with a helper and a win over the Pens. A few games later, he had another apple in a 4-4 tie with the Rockies, as the Flyers blew a 4-goal lead. But after a shutout loss to Toronto, he had an assist in a 5-5 tie with the Whalers. Then it was back-to-back tough losses to the Bruins and the Islanders, the latter of which Clarke had a goal. However, Bobby and the boys rebounded big time in a win over the Nordiques. The Flyers trailed 2-1 in the second period, but he assisted on goals to Verveger and Prop, just 26 seconds apart to give the Flyers a 3-2 lead. And in the third, scored to make it 5-2. That's how it ended. A goal, 2 assists, 3 points, his first 3-point night of the year. He would miss the next game, a tie with the Capitals, then return in a win over the Flames. Then he missed a tie with Quebec, but on April 3rd, my goodness, he was a machine, the Bobby of old. Flyers found themselves down 2-0 in the second to the Caps, but then boom, an apple for Reggie, boom, an apple for Jimmy, tied 2-2 after 2, third period, boom boom, 2 more apples for Leach, a 4-2 win, and a 4-assist night for our hero. He had actually set up the final game of the year, a loss to the Rangers. But a great finish for Bobby. 3 goals, 12 assists for 15 points and 17 innings and a +4. Wow. The Flyers finished the season 48, 12, and 20 for 116 points, just 2 shy of the team record that was set back in 1975-76. But regardless, the Flyers take back the division and have the best record in the NHL for the first time since 1974-75. The history-making year has completed Phase 1. But now, it's playoff time! Ah, well, this is interesting. The Edmonton Oilers, who slipped into the final spot of the playoffs at the very end of the season. With a mere record of 28, 39, and 13, they were coached by former NHL journeyman Glenn Sather. They were a team combined with young talent and hockey veterans from the WHA and the NHL. In their final WHA season last year, they made it to the AFCO Cup Finals. First year in the NHL, however, their power play was mid, as was their penalty kill, but the Flyers also went 3-0-1 against them in the season series, so this probably might be just easy peasy. Well, I mean, the Oilers do have a few things going for them. Again, like this teenage phenom from Brantford, Ontario, Wayne Gretzky, who at 19 years old, scored 51 goals, 86 assists for 137 points. The first teenage player to reach 100 points in a season and score 50 goals. Tied for first in the league in scoring with Marcel Dionne of the Los Angeles Kings. He was dazzling crowds all over the league and wowing everyone with his skills. And he perfected the game pretty much. He took home the Hart Trophy as league MVP, the first teenager to do that, and he also took home the Lady Byng Trophy for excellence in sportsmanship. He was a second-team All-Star. With numbers like this, I wonder what the future holds. Then joining the newly christened Great One is highly skilled winger Blair McDonald, who before entering the NHL had 3 consecutive seasons of 34 goals in the WHA. And boy did he make his first NHL season count. 46 goals, 48 assists for 94 points in all 80 games. Tied for 10th in league scoring. Tied Marcel Dionne for the league in hat tricks with 4. And he was 4th in Lady Byng Trophy voting, just coming up short of being a finalist. They also had a good talent in Stan Weir, 33 goals, 33 assists for 66 points, and 3rd in the league in shooting percentage. Weir spent 6 seasons in the NHL as a reliable role player. After 1 year in the WHA, he became more of an offensive threat, and now back in the NHL, he remains that way. Also on this forward core, you have 20 goal scorers Brett Callahan and Dave Lumley. You also had hard-nosed forward Dave Hunter, young 19-year-old go-getter by the name of Mark Messier, Don Murdoch, who was acquired from the Rangers, and rounding them out was Don Ashby and tough guy Dave Semenko. Their defense wasn't without talent, as Doug Hicks had a career year, 9 goals, 31 assists for 40 points, and a team-leading +18. Traditional defender who was excellent at leading a rush, he was by far the Oilers' best blue liner this year. They also had pesky Pat Price, who had a good season. Rookie and first-round draft pick Kevin Lowe showed a lot of promise, as Grizzlies veteran Al Hamilton finished import Risto Siltanen, and former Penguins fan favorite Colin Campbell lent a lot of substance. In goal, the Oilers were pretty awful, and they weren't strong at all. As a matter of fact, they gave up the second most goals in the league. But they went through 6 goaltenders this season, but the best of their pack was Ron Lowe with an 8-2-1 record despite a 3.42 goals against average. He did have a pretty good 897 save percentage, so he's going to be their guy in the playoffs. Now the new playoff format as a preliminary round is now a best-of-5 series, so here we go. Game 1, the Spectrum is buzzing. The Flyers are bombarding Ron Lowe, and the Flyers' defense is keeping Peters well protected. The Flyers took a 1-0 lead earlier, but then Bobby goes in on goal with Reggie, who gets the goal. 2-0 Flyers. The Oilers stun them, and it's 2-2 after 1, and also after 2. But the Oilers stun the Flyers further. They take a 3-2 lead midway in the third period. Time is winding down. Don't tell me this is happening. With 1:19 left, the clutcher himself, McLeish, ties it. We are off to overtime and 8:06 in. Poor Ron Lowe. Those familiar letters: B, Barber, L, Leach, C, Bobby Clarke. His third playoff OT winner, his first in 5 years. It was a close call, but the Flyers take the first game. Huge game for our hero. Game 2, the Flyers are unstoppable. Tied 1-1 in the second period. Power play. Reggie to Daly to Bobby. Makes it 2-1, and that would prove to be the game winner in a big 5-1 win. Clarke was key in keeping Gretzky off the score sheet. In this one, the Flyers were on the verge of winning in a sweep. Game 3, the first NHL playoff game, to be played at Northlands Coliseum. And the hometown Oilers take a 2-0 lead after one period. But the Flyers get one back in the second and one in the third. It's 2-2 after regulation. We're off to OT again. But Meyer and Lowe are actually playing outstanding in net. So the first OT winds down with no winner. 3:56 in a double overtime. Kenny Linsman scores. The Flyers sweep the upstart Oilers in 3 games, and Clarke played excellently here, especially in Game 1 with his big overtime winner, and the game winner in Game 2. But the Oilers didn't make it easy for the Flyers, but regardless, the road continues. Oh boy, here we go, a chance at revenge and redemption. After the most humiliating loss of his career last season, our hero gets another crack at the New York Rangers these playoffs, who again embarrassed the Flyers in last year's quarterfinal series. The Rangers also appeared in the Stanley Cup the year prior and had a good record this year at 38-32-10 for 86 points, and were still coached by the man who's behind the success of the Flyers, Freddie Shero. The Rangers had the 3rd-ranked power play and 4th-ranked penalty kill lead, so they're just amazing on special teams. To get here, they took out the Atlanta Flames in 4 games, and the Flyers did win the season series, however, with a record of 2-1-1. But again, last year still fresh in the minds of Bobby, his teammates, the fans, and of course the experts and analysts. And they are led by the ageless wonder known as Phil Esposito at 38 years old, who had another tremendous year, 34 goals, 44 assists for 78 points. Played in his 10th NHL All-Star game, notched 13 power play goals. After last season, he was determined to obtain one last championship before he hits the road. He's still as passionate about winning than ever. Swedish sensation Anders Hedberg continues to shine in the NHL, 32 goals, 39 assists, 71 points, and a good plus 13. He was dazzling fans in the Big Apple with his skills and was now truly a superstar with his team, who again gets treated like they are stars on Broadway. Veteran Walt Tkachuk is one of the most popular Rangers players of his era. His hard work ethic made him a hero to Rangers fans, and his abilities in checking as well as winning faceoffs and making big defensive plays got him some votes for the Selke Trophy this year, and he was also a really good plus 19. His tremendous leadership earned him the respect of his teammates to boot, and he brings a great deal of playoff experience. And on his forward core, nightlife living Ron Duguay, he had a really good year. Also key on the penalty kill to boot, Don Maloney was emerging as a new star, while Steve Vickers led the league in shooting percentage. Ulf Nilsson battled injury issues, but was consistent when healthy, and healthy for these playoffs. Ed Johnston was a key role player for the club, and so was Dean Talalfas. The Rangers' defense saw a new injection of life with the arrival of Barry Beck in a big trade with the Rockies. In 61 games with the Rangers, he had 14 goals, 45 assists for 59 points and a plus 13. A towering big man with a growing nasty streak. He's exactly what this blue line core needs. Ron Greshner still provided a great deal of offensive presence, while Dave Maloney provides leadership, and Mario Marwal can also get straight up in your face, and veteran Carol Valdney still brings a lot to the table. Rookies Tim Bothwell and Ed Hospodar are looking pretty good. In net, it's the ever-popular JD, John Davidson. He had a passable 3.17 goals against average and okay 885 save percentage, and he did have 2 shutouts. Either way, this is a highly anticipated rematch from last season, so here we go. Game 1, the Spectrum is hungry for blood, and the goaltenders steal the show in this one. Peters and Davidson put on a clinic. It's a tight one, but the Flyers take it 2-1. Clarke plays a solid defensive game here. Game 2, the goaltenders are again the story to start the game after a scoreless first period. And after Paul Holmgren scores a goal, 14 seconds later, Clarke gets it back to Wilson, who puts it out in front for Barber. It's 2-0 Flyers. They take Game 2 4-1. Clarke again played very well here, and any resemblance of last year seems to now be a distant memory. But now we shift to New York for Game 3, where the Big Apple bunch still believe in their Rangers. But Peters, proving to be the MVP of this series, gets a 29-save shutout in a 3-0 win. Just like the old days, Clarke was all over Esposito. The Flyers led the series 3-0, are on the verge of committing another sweep. Game 4, we're still at Madison Square Garden, but it's a much different story. Espo breaks away from Bobby, has a 3-point night. The Rangers take it 4-2. Clarke has an assist in a pretty rough game overall, when the Rangers managed to stay alive. Game 5, however, we are back to the Spectrum, and this Flyers team is dead focused, and Mel Bridgman leads the way in a 3-1 win, and the Flyers, after a 1-year absence, are going back to the semifinals. Oh, sweet redemption for our hero and his boys. Able to shake last year's chip off their shoulder, and able to take out the Rangers in 5 games, and sticking it to former coach Fred Shiro. They pretty much rolled over the Rangers for the most part here. Bobby played well. He had 2 assists and a +2, but more so his defensive game here was a bigger factor. And a little trivia note, it would also prove to be the last playoff series for Phil Esposito. So now it's off to the semifinals, and awaiting them was an unexpected foe, the Minnesota North Stars. Yes, for many years they are pretty much the proverbial laughingstock of the NHL. They finished with a record this year of 36, 28, and 16 for 88 points. Glenn Saunders, the second-year coach, had this team focused and fearless, while GM Lou Nanne gave them the right players and talent to work with. They had a good power play and even better penalty kill. In the opening round, they swept out the Leafs in 3 straight, but in the second round, did the unthinkable. In 7 games, they dethroned the dynasty of the Montreal Canadiens, ending their 4-year reign on top of the league. So this shows that they are more than capable of pulling off another upset. In the season series, however, the Flyers did dominate and were 3-1-0, but the one loss to the Stars ended their 35-game unbeaten streak, if you recall. Well, the Flyers are a step away from returning to the big dance. Can they get there? Well, the Stars are led by veteran winger Al McAdam, a reliable hand who could sometimes score 20 or more goals, had a career year of 42 goals, 51 assists for 93 points in all 80 games, leading the whole team, and was an excellent +36. He had sharp defensive and checking abilities and able to read plays from his centerman. He was a major cornerstone in this team's turnaround. And he was also the recipient of that year's Bill Masterton Trophy for perseverance and dedication to hockey, an award Clarke won nearly a decade prior. He was also 4th in the league in shooting percentage. Oddly enough, McAdam was once a Flyer and traded for Reggie Leach. Also a part of their big turnaround was their 2 1978 draft picks, first being 1978's first overall pick, Bobby Smith, a year removed from being the NHL's top rookie, had an excellent sophomore year. 27 goals, 56 assists for 83 points in just 61 games, missing 19 due to injury, but is very much good to go in these playoffs and playing very well. A highly gifted playmaking center with size, this team was being built around him, and so far he was delivering and his teammates were responding. But there was also another young prospect drafted that same year also making waves. Left winger Steve Payne in his sophomore year was amazing. 42 goals, 43 assists for 85 points in all 80 games, and a team-leading excellent +37. He was great on a power play, scoring 16 extra man markers, tied for 6th in the league. A winger with size and puck control abilities, he was also a big-time clutch scorer who could score important goals in big situations. Also on this forward core, they had Tim Young, who notched 31 goals, hardworking Glenn Sharpley, who, despite battling injuries, is productive when healthy. Also rookie center Mike Eves, grinding forward Tom McCarthy, Ron Zanussi, Mike Pollock, and Ken Eric Anderson. On the defense, another young prospect turning heads was 6th overall pick for the Stars in the 1979 draft 1 year of WHA pro experience under his belt, he took to the NHL fast. I'm talking about Craig Hartsburg. He was a hard-hitting, punishing blue liner that can get downright aggressive if need be. He's also capable of quarterbacking a power play and leading a rush. His offensive numbers are excellent too. 14 goals, 30 assists for 44 points, and he was a major key in the Stars' victory over the Habs. He also represented the Stars at the NHL All-Star Game. They also had another tough defenseman in Brad Maxwell. Veteran Paul Schmier had some grit left in him. They also had Greg Smith, veteran fan favorite Fred Barrett, and rookie Kurt Giles. In goal, whose man has always been talented, but finally had a good team in front of him, Joe Meloche. Now, the first winning season he has ever had in his career was this year, as, yes, I know, he was once 2-0-0 as a third-string goalie in Chicago in his first season. But here he was 27-20-5. His 27 wins were tied for 4th best in the league. His 3.06 goals against average was 10th, his .897 save percentage was 8th, and he racked up a shutout. He also played in his first NHL All-Star game, and was amazing in the playoff win over the Habs. Whew, so, here we go. Game 1, the Spectrum is buzzing as the team draws closer to the cup. The Stars struck first, but 104 later on the power play. Clarke back to Daly, over to Hill, shoots it home. Game is tied 1-1. The Stars took a 3-1 lead, however, but the Flyers worked back 4-3, and that was all in the first period. The Stars took a 5-3 lead in the second and never looked back. They won 6-5. Well, the Flyers' first home loss this postseason, and it shows the unthinkable is very much possible. Game 2, both teams make goaltending changes, and the Flyers start Meyer. The Stars start Gary Edwards, but after the tough loss, the Flyers do not panic and refocus, and it shows up early as they lead 2-0 after 1. Then 56 seconds into the second period on the power play, Daly, yep, Hill, yep, Bobby, oh yeah, it's 3-0 Flyers. Flyers going to win 7-0. Tying the series, Daly, Barber, Linsman, and Meyer were all huge heroes on this night. Clarke played very well, much better than his first game. Game 3, we go to the Met Center in Minnesota, and the fans are psyched to see their Stars. But the Flyers spoil their party late in the first period on a power play from Barber, and just under 2 minutes later, Wilson gets to Bobby. It's a Billy, 2-0 after 1. It went to 3-0 in the second, and then, poor Joe Meloche. LCB. Barber for the goal. 4-0. The Stars nearly made a comeback, closing it to 4-3, but the Flyers will take this one 5-3 and take the series lead 2-1 as Clarke schooled young Bobby Smith on this night. Game 4, the Stars faithful aren't giving up hope, and indeed they strike first late in the first period. Just over 3.5 minutes later, Bobby to Reggie. You know the result. It's 1-1 after 1. Barber just red hot at this point in this series, scoring the second to make it 2-1, the third to make it 3-1. Meyer is amazing, and then Clarke still putting Smithy in his place, as he had been a warrior like the Clarke of old in these playoffs. Flyers win at 3-2 and take a 3-1 series lead, just one win away from returning to the Cup final. Game 5, the Spectrum is rocking like it did in 74 and 75, and they feel extra confident in their boys tonight. But they're silenced early when the Stars score just 44 seconds in, but again, there's no panic in this Flyers club. Sure enough, they go up 3-1. But after the Stars cut the gap to 3-2, 2:17 later, Clarke has the puck, gets it back to Dupont, who sets up Daly for the goal. It's 4-2 Flyers after 1. Early in the second period, Bobby sees his man Reggie at the firing range, loads with the bullet. Reggie shoots it home. 5-2 Flyers. The Flyers lead 6-3 late in the second. Then it's Watson, Busnick. Bobby chooses his spot and he parks it home. 7-3 Flyers. A 3-point night for Bobby. And that's after 2 periods. The Flyers are playing very smart defensively in the third period, not allowing the Stars to get anything going for a possible comeback. Time is winding down. The Spectrum is shaking. 1 minute to play. Oh, these long roads to travel and high hills to climb for the past 4 years are reaching the big destination. 30 seconds. The crowd gets louder, louder. 10 seconds. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. The Philadelphia Flyers are going to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time in 4 years, and our hero, oh boy, did he have a lot to do with it. 2 goals, 6 assists, 8 points, a big +4 in all 5 games. He was just wrecking poor young Bobby Smith out there, who in this series was held to just an assist and a -7. Clarke's spirit never died, especially in the the clinching game. But in these playoffs, in case anyone has forgotten, it was a reminder that he still had the drive to win and leadership to help his team accomplish these great feats. Well, the journey back has hit many speed bumps, stalls, obstacles, hell, you name it. But Bobby Clarke didn't quit, and he didn't let his team quit. The sacrifices he has made for this team have paid off more often than not, and this year is living proof of that. 4 years since they had the chance, 5 years since they last lifted Lord Stanley. Clarke looks for ring number 3, as do a few others on this club, and for the younger players, they look for their very first time. They indeed look up to their mentor and their leader, Mr. Bobby Clarke. But here we are now. We are off to the Stanley Cup Final. And we got the matchup that many have been longing to see. Ho 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 ho, yes! At last, the dream match has come to fruition. For the 1980 Stanley Cup, it will be the Philadelphia Flyers against the New York Islanders. This rivalry truly kicked off in 1975, which is actually the last time these two faced in the playoffs, as a matter of fact. The infamous series where the Flyers survived a 3-game comeback to force a Game 7, but ultimately won. But a lot has changed since then, as again, they have not faced the Islanders in the playoffs since they become top-tier contenders. Many experts and pundits agreed after the Flyers' time in the sun had ended that the Isles' time was coming. And these two clubs battle for the Patrick Division title, the Isles winning at the prior 2 seasons. But their playoff woes worsened every year, it seemed. Now, many felt the Islanders' chance had passed them by as well. They still had a really good season, finishing 39, 28, and 13 for 91 points. But that was down 25 points from the year prior that they had the best record in the league. But head coach Al Arbour had this team ready come postseason, as they beat the LA Kings in 4 games in the opening round. They then took out the Big Bad Bruins in 5, and the powerful Sabres in 6 to finally make it to their first Stanley Cup final. Their power play has dipped, their penalty kill wasn't much better, but things started working in the playoffs. The season series between these two was tied 2-2-0. You can't ask for a better Stanley Cup final than this. This was going to be something. Leading the way was the great Brian Trottier, the true definition of a multi-dimensional forward who can do it all. A tried-and-true playmaker with a great eye, physical presence, a defensive game, and a man who just wanted to win more than anything else. 42 goals, 62 assists, 104 points. That put him 6th in league scoring. Tied for 8th in power play goals with 15, 6th in game-winning goals with 7, and was a plus 31. He was absolutely killing it in these playoffs too. His leadership and work ethic truly defines why he's one of the best of all time. Then there was the NHL's super sniper, the one and only Mike Bossy. The man just had an uncanny focus and determined presence on the ice. His wrist shot often fooled the best of goalies. And he was a superb skater, a hard player to defend against. His 51 goals were tied for 5th best in the NHL, and he added 41 assists and totaling 92 points. His 15 power play markers were tied for 8th in the league with teammate Trottier. He's also tied for 8th in even strength goals with 36, and was coming up in the clutch often, tied for 4th in the league with 8 game winners. Another man who helped shape this team into what they become was hard-nosed Clark Gillies at left wing. A power forward in every sense of the word, he'd do whatever it took to get close to the net, and was also a tremendous clutch player. He was a very motivational leader, too, to his teammates, and truly defined the never-quit attitude. His scoring contribution, however, saw a heavy decline this year. He had 19 goals, 35 assists for 54 points in 73 games. His goals were down by 16, his assists were down by 21, and total points were down by 37. Be that as it may, he was still a plus 28 and was a heavy checking presence on the ice, and again was playing pretty well in these playoffs. And indeed, the Islanders as a whole, however, went from being the top scoring team last year to 12th this year. They added more depth to their forward core late in the season, acquiring veteran Butch Goring, a tremendous power play presence and expert penalty killer. He's a former All-Star with the LA Kings and was regarded as one of the best two-way players in the league. And he's making a difference in these playoffs. Also, a couple young grinding forwards, and John Stanley and Dwayne Sutter were lending a hand. Fan favorite and clutch scorer Bobby Nystrom was here. Another positive two-way presence in Big Bob Bourne, plus Lauren Henning, Wayne Merrick, and the ever-popular tough man, Gary Howitt. On the defense, the captain, the great Denny Potvin. In a team full of great leaders, Potvin is the man wearing the C.
Now, at times, he had been immature, egomaniacal, and very hard to deal with. But as he's gotten older, he's used his intelligence, his articulate and outspoken nature to inspire his team, help them grow along with him. A three-time Norris Trophy winner as the league's top defenseman, he only played 31 games this season due to injuries, but he had 41 points in those 31 games and has been tremendous in the playoffs. And despite his limited action this season, he actually came in ninth for Hart Trophy voting. Joining him in this score, Swedish import Stefan Persson, former WHA All-Star Dave Langevin, Bob Lorimer, Gord Lane, and fresh off an Olympic gold medal as part of the Miracle on Ice mere months before this, Kenny Morrow. And in net, the NHL's nastiest goalie, Battling Billy Smith. He played a bold game and he was successful because of it. And for years now, he has split goaltending duties with Chico Resch. His record was decent enough, 15, 14, and 7, and had a very good 2.95 goals against average, which was 7th best. His 898 save percentage was 5th best in the league, and he had 2 shutouts. And in these playoffs, he was brilliant. Well, at long last, this matchup so many have wanted to see has come to fruition. Without any further ado, here we go. Game 1. The Spectrum has Stanley Cup fever. It's tied 1-1 after one period, but the Isles take a 2-1 lead in the second until power play. Poor Billy Smith. L. B. C. Clarke scores his 5th goal of these playoffs. The game is tied 2-2 after 2. The Flyers took the lead deep into the third period, but the Isles tied it with 3:42 remaining. We're off to overtime, but Denny Pavin sinks the Flyers and they are down a game. Game 2, the Flyers refuse to lose their cool and panic. However, they do get a little hot-tempered along with the Isles in this game as it saw 84 penalty minutes. Be that as it may, Holmgren tied the game 1-1 in the first period. Just 1:15 later, Bobby C to Ben W to Bob K. The Flyers take the lead. Then late in the period, Billy to Jimmy and then to Bobby. It's 3-1 after 1. Then just 1:06 into the second period, poor Billy Smith again. L to C to B. 4-1 Flyers, leading 5-2. Late in the second, it's the triple Bs. Bobby to Bob to Brian. Prop gets the goal. 6-2 Flyers after 2. They go on to win 8-3. What an epic game for Bobby Clarke. A goal, 3 apples, 4 points. He is showered with cheers from the Philly faithful for his performance. The series is now tied 1-1. Game 3, we hit the island for the first Stanley Cup final game to be played at the Nassau Coliseum in a game that saw 104 penalty minutes and a harsh response from the previous game, courtesy of the Islanders. This time, it's the Islanders' turn to light up Phil Meyer. They go up 6-0 after 2 periods as many dumb penalties cost the Flyers dearly in this one. Clarke would break the shutout in the third, but the Flyers lose 6-2 and go down 2-1 in this series. Game 4 isn't much better. The Isles went up 2-0 and never looked back. Clarke was trying his damnedest out there, but Trottier and Bourne helped shut him down. Islanders go on to win 5-2. Thanks to a big 3.9 from Clark Gillies, the Flyers now trail the Stanley Cup 3-1 and are on the verge of elimination. Game 5 back at the Spectrum, but the fans believe, but it's do or die. But the arena was silent by the end of the first period as the Flyers trailed 1-0, but just 1:45 into the second period. Leach back to Wilson, up to Bobby! He scores, the Spectrum wakes up, it's 1-1. The Flyers led 3-2 after 2 and go on to win 6-3. They are still in this thing, but still trail the series 3-2. Clarke was a little more forceful in this game. Can they make the comeback? Game 6, back on the island. The fans are rabid. The tension in this game is immense. 94 penalty minutes. Oh man, it just got crazy with this game very early on. 1-1 in the first. The Flyers were furious after Dwayne Sutter goal, which stemmed from a pass that was clearly offside, was scored and gave the Isles a 2-1 lead. The Flyers argued to no avail. But the game was tied 2-2 after 1, but then the Islanders took a 4-2 lead after 2 periods. This is not good. But again, Bobby's never say die attitude was a reflection of the entire team. And sure enough, the game was tied 4-4 in the third period. Clock went down. We are headed to OT. But a lot of you know how this ends. Just 7-11 in. Bob Nystrom cements his legacy with Islanders fans. The Flyers lose the Stanley Cup in 6 games. At the time, it was considered somewhat of an upset. The Flyers were favorites, but not heavy favorites. as there were some out there who knew this Isles team was much better than their regular season record, which was still good, mind you. Many suggest they were much better than their record might have shown. It was just a matter of circumstances, really. And to win it, the Islanders did take a 3 out of the 4 100-point teams in this league. So hindsight definitely dictates this is not a big upset at all. But alas, the Flyers' dream season ends in heartbreak. Clarke put on an epic performance with his 4 points in Game 2 and played well for the most part in this final, totaling 4 goals, 3 assists for 7 points, and a really good +3. Still, it's a very small consolation. But overall, Bobby was excellent in these playoffs. 8 goals, 12 assists, 20 points in 19 games. His 20 points put him in a 3-way tie for 6th in the playoff scoring with teammate Paul Holmgren and Bob Bourne of the Islanders. Finishing just ahead of him was Bill Barber with 21 points, and breakout star Kenny Linsman with 22 led the team. Clarke was also in a 3-way tie for 8th in plus-minus in these playoffs with an excellent +10, and tied with teammate Bill Barber and Denny Potvin of the Isles. But as you see, 8 out of the 10 on this list are Flyers players, with Andre Dupont leading the whole playoffs, the massive +21. Well, back to the regular season. Bobby Clarke got 12 goals, 57 assists for 69 points in 76 games. It was a career low in goals and his third lowest points total of his career. But either way, it's still productive. The LCB line pretty much became the LCP line this year. Well, once again, Clarke and Leach were untouchable. Leach assists on 7 of Clarke's goals, which is more than half, while Clarke assists on 31 of Leach's goals, more than half of Clarke's assists that year were to Reggie Leach, who scored 50 goals that year, by the way. So all but 19 of Leach's goals were assisted by Bobby Clarke, and the two collaborated on 8 assists together, totaling 46 goals. Wow, Pat Quinn really changed things up a lot this year, but it must have worked because they're too often shifted with rookie Brian Propp, who had an excellent year, and it paid off. Propp also collaborated with Clarke on 8 assists. The two together produced 22 goals. However, the LCB line was put together quite often in the playoffs. Clarke only teamed up with Barber, however, in the regular season was to create 9 goals. Clarke once again found himself in the top 10 among assist leaders this year. His 57 helpers put him in a 3-way tie for 8th with teammate Kenny Linsman and Leafs superstar Daryl Sittler. Damn, just look at this list. Truly a great playmaker on here. But either way, Clarke still proves to be one of the best passers and setup men in the game. Clarke also made the top 10 in plus-minus this year. His +42 was 8th best in the league, just one notch ahead of teammate Reggie Leach. Brian Propp was just ahead with a +45, while Jimmy Watson was 3rd in the league with a +52. Once again, Clarke's value to his team is again noticed, as he did garner 6 votes for the Hart Trophy as league MVP, coming in 10th. Well, it was another storied year for Bobby Clarke. The initiative he took to become an assistant coach to be more hands-on with the team and get them to a better place. And hey, he led them to the largest unbeaten streak in North American sports history. Despite losing in the Cup final, Clarke's commitment to this club and his teammates shined through once again this year, and it helped put the Flyers on a much better path. Again, many had written them off, but Bobby, as he always does, proves many people wrong and thrives on the very pressure that was in front of him this year. Where does it go from here going forward? Going into the 1980-81 season, the Flyers had high expectations going into it. Clarke stayed on as assistant coach, and the team was still seen as top contenders after the year they were coming off of. It was an interesting time to be a sports fan in Philadelphia. Around the time the Flyers made it to the Cup, the 76ers made it to the NBA championship. As the season was about to begin, the Phillies were on the verge of winning their first World Series, and the Eagles were on a journey that would ultimately lead them to be NFC champions and make it to the Super Bowl. Clarke was ready for whatever obstacles may come, but last year has made the Flyers and our hero a very hungry bunch. However, the team parted ways with longtime defenseman Andre Dupont, a move that upset many Flyers fans, as the Moose was off to Quebec. They pretty much got the cash and a big bag of pucks in return. Quinn added more size to the team, and he had rookie winger Tim Kerr, who went undrafted. Terry Murray, who did play for the Flyers for a brief spell a few years prior, returned to the club on defense. Oh, well, here we go. Bobby started the season on fire in the season/home opener against the Pittsburgh Penguins. He had 2 assists each to Bill Barber in a 7-4 win. He had an assist each in a win over the Sharp Blues team and a loss to the Leafs.
Then that would be the first of their 3 straight losses. They suffered one to the Canucks and then one in Toronto, where Clarke scored his first goal of the year. After a win over the Habs, Bobby went on a tear. First in a heated Stanley Cup rematch with the Islanders on October 23rd, and poor Billy Smith. Late in the first period, C, B, L, Leach gets the goal to make it 1-0. Bobby gets the empty net goal and has a notch and an apple each in the 4-2 win. Then part 2 of the home-and-home series, an apple each for Barber and Leach in a 3-1 win, getting a measure of revenge against their rivals. He was also named first star of the game. Then back at home against the Whalers. It was 3 assists in a huge 6-1 win, and he was named third star of that game. And then they were hosting the Calgary Flames. Yes, indeed, the Calgary Flames, as indeed hockey in Atlanta failed. Bet they'll never try that again. And they doused them 8-0. Clarke with 2 helpers in that one, their 5th straight win. 9 points in 4 games. We'll make that 10 in 5 games, as they went unbeaten in 6, as Clarke had an assist in a tie against the Rangers. Great start for Clarke in the month of October. 2 goals, 13 assists for 15 points in 11 games. An excellent +8. To begin November, Clarke and the boys made a trip to Quebec City to face the Nordiques and their red-hot new talent, Czech import Peter Stastny. Now, this is not the first time Clarke and Stastny have faced off. Matter of fact, they faced each other in the 1976 Canada Cup. Stastny was just 20 years old. The game ended in a 3-3 tie, and Clarke went toe-to-toe and schooled an NHL newbie, but walked away with an assist. But Clarke, however, was a +1, Stastny a -2. Flyers continued to roll. Clarke scored the opening goal in a 4-2 win over a very sluggish-looking Bruins team who didn't look so big or bad these days. And after beating the Kings, they went on to beat the Whalers again. Clarke with 2 assists, the latter coming on Reggie Leach's game winner in a tight 5-4 win. The new hot streak continued. A win over the Nordiques, and an 8-1 win over the Oilers. Clarke just owning Gretzky in this one. He also had an assist and had an apple in a win over the dead thing Red Wings. That's 13 games unbeaten. No. Don't want to get your hopes up. That's as good as this streak would get. Still great, however. The next 4 games were pretty rough for Clarke, but they ended the month on a 4-game unbeaten streak. First against an absolutely pathetic Jets team who I've covered on this channel. He had a goal and assist each. After a win in LA against a really good Kings team, and it was off to face the Rockies of Colorado. Clarke had 2 goals in the second period that tied the game 3-3 and an assist on a Tim Kerr goal to make it 5-3 in the third. A 3-point night en route to a 7-4 win. They ended the month with a tie over the Canucks, and for the month, Clarke had 4 goals, 8 assists, 12 points in 15 games. It was again a +8. On December 4th, the Flyers hosted the Chicago Blackhawks and their top young prospect, Denis Savard. Savard had a goal, but was no match for veteran Bobby Clarke on this night, who had 2 assists in a 7-5 triumph. After a goal against the Red Wings in a loss, 2 assists against the Rockies in a win, and a helper in a tie with the Hawks. On December 13th, 1980, it was off to Pittsburgh to face the Penguins, and it looked like the Pens were in control of this one, leading 3-1 after the first period. But as 22 seconds into the second period, Leach got it back to the point for Wilson, who sets up Bobby Clarke, and the Flyers are within 1. The Pens again took control and led 5-3. And with 1:46 left in the period, the Flyers trying to kill a penalty. Oh, Wilson clears the puck away. Clarke goes in on goal. Greg Millen stands no chance. And the Flyers are back to within 1. A minute 30 later on the power play, Barber in with Clarke. Hat trick for Bobby Clarke, his first since March 3rd, 1974. The 4th of his career. Not only is this game tied 5-5, the Flyers are going to win 6-5. 3 goals, 3 different ways. Remarkable he can still do it in any given situation. And yes, he was named first star of the game, as this unique hat trick was even better than the 4 goals Paul Gardner and the Penguins scored that night. In the next 6 games, Clarke had a goal and 2 assists. He ended the month, however, with a goal and a helper and a tight loss to the Stars. He ended December with 6 goals, 8 assists, 14 points in 12 games, and was a +5. January of 1981 was one of the weakest months of Clarke's entire career. His 3 goals, 7 assists for 10 points in 14 games wasn't too bad, but he was a -4. And the Flyers won only 6 of 14 games that month, with some ties, of course, thrown in there. I don't want to mislead anybody. But one of their losses was to the Jets, who won 2 games all year going into that one. He did have 2 assists on January 10th against the lowly Leafs club. In February, Clarke's scoring production had plummeted. 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points in 13 games, under half a point a game, but he wasn't even 0. He had a goal and a helper in a February 7th loss to the Quebec Nordiques. Again, the Flyers only won 6 games that month, and now this time out of 13. Clarke began March very well. At least they beat the f***ing Jets 10-1 on March 5th at home. And he had 3 helpers in that one, 2 for Al Hill and 1 for Bill Barber. He would have a goal and assist in the next 6 games. It was a -3. But on March 19, 1981, the Boston Bruins, who started the year pretty rough, were back to being winners. And they visited the Bruins. And during this game, however, Reggie Leach's slap shot accidentally struck Clarke in the head. Clarke, well, hey, pain is for tomorrow. He was hurt, not injured. He got himself stitched up, returned to the ice, buttoned his jersey, and after 2 periods, the Flyers led 4-0. Well, Leach was going to make it up to his teammate. Leach sent Clarke in towards the Boston zone. Clarke shot the puck, but Marco Barron stopped it. But on the rebound, he scored! And why was this goal so important, you ask? Because it was career point number 1,000. As at that time, he was just the 15th player in NHL history to reach it. He was the 8th player to score his first 1,000 points with just one team. And in his 922nd game, he was the 6th fastest to reach it. And he was also the 3rd player that year to reach the mark, as Marcel Dion of the Kings reached it just over 2 months prior, while Habs superstar Guy Lafleur hit the mark a mere 15 days earlier. And with the blood in his jersey, the stitches in his head, seems like Bobby accomplished this huge mark in true Bobby fashion. He ended the year with 2 assists in the remaining 7 games and was a -1. But despite some consistency issues, the Flyers still finished 41-24-15 for 97 points. They would lose the division to the Islanders, but in terms of overall seeding for the playoffs, they were 6th and would face the 11th seeded team, as now it's playoff time. And in the preliminary round, the Flyers in the best-of-5 series will take on the Quebec Nordiques, formerly of the WHA, now in the NHL. The Nords finished 30-32-18 for 78 points, which was 17 points higher than last season. They were a team growing with young players, and they also had a lot of experienced veterans. And GM Maurice Filion was giving head coach Michel Bergeron, a.k.a. Bergie, the players that he can mold into contenders. The Nords had a good power play, a so-so penalty kill, and they actually won the season series with the Flyers this year with a record of 2-1-1. This is their first playoff experience in the NHL. It'll be hard for them to take on the heavily playoff experienced Flyers, but there's no shortage of talent here. And as mentioned earlier, they are led by Czechoslovakian native and rookie sensation, Peter Stastny. He hit La Belle Province on fire. A superstar in his native land, a gold and 2 silvers at the Ice Hockey World Championships, a Canada Cup finalist, as I mentioned, an Olympic competitor. Stastny's defection to Canada was like a story out of a movie. And in his first NHL season, he was a beast. 39 goals, 70 assists for 109 points, which was 6th best in the league. He was the first rookie in NHL history to reach 100 points in a season. He was awarded the Calder Trophy as the league's top rookie. He came in 11th for Hart Trophy voting and tied for 16th in Lady Byng Trophy voting. He was the man they were going to build this team around, but he didn't come here alone. Peter's brother Anton Stastny was a world junior star and played in the Olympics alongside his brother, a thinking man swinger who could read a play and get himself in a position to make a play. He equaled his brother's goal total of 39 and adding 46 assists, easy for me to say, for 85 points in all 80 games. He came in 10th in Calder Trophy voting for league's top rookie and tied with his brother for 16th in Lady Byng Trophy voting. Jacques Richard for many years was considered a disappointment. After a couple decent seasons in Atlanta, he toiled in the Sabre system on and off, spending time between them and the minors, and he finally thrived in Quebec. A breakout year nobody expected. 52 goals, 51 assists for 103 points, which was tied for 10th best in the league and was 7th in goals. His 36 even strength goals were tied with Wayne Gretzky for 3rd, and he was tied for 8th with 16 power play goals. Also on the score, they had rising star winger Michel Goulet, who scored 32 goals, a hungry and gritty rookie by the name of Dale Hunter, veteran Nordiques legend Mark Tardif, two-way specialist Robbie Fatorik, who got votes for the Selke, Réal Cloutier, Alain Cote, Bob Fitchner, and former Bruins tough guy John Winsink, who brings playoff experience. The Nordiques defense was still trying to find its identity, but this season, no doubt, their best blue liner was Pierre Lacroix. No, not that Pierre Lacroix, but a different Pierre Lacroix, sophomore defenseman, who was a big help on the power play. Was a plus 10 and chipped in with 34 assists, overall 39 points. A traditional style defender who's good at keeping up with star forwards. Late in the season, they acquired tough man Mario Marois, who adds a lot of depth, and pro veteran Dale Hoganson and rookie Noah Rochefort. As well, Lee Norwood, Wally Weir, and the heavily playoff experience with 119 playoff games under his belt and 2 Stanley Cups, former Flyer Andre Moose DuPont. In goal, they had the veteran Dan Bouchard, who was recently acquired in a huge deal with the Flames. Since joining the Nordiques, Bouchard has been excellent. Record of 19-5-5, a really good 3.17 goals against average, and a good 895 save percentage and 2 shutouts. He was also 7th in Hart Trophy voting, but hasn't had much luck in the playoffs in his career. Well, either way, here we go. Game 1 at the Spectrum. The sellout crowd is ready, and this game is wild. The Nords are refusing to be pushed around. The Flyers were leading 2-0 and later 3-1 after the first. Bobby is playing pretty well. The Nords shockingly tied at 3-3 after 2. The Flyers ran away with it in the third as huge games from Barber, Propp, and Holmgren led them to a 6-4 win. And a huge bench brawl erupted with 24 seconds left to play. Led the game to have a combined 168 penalty minutes. Either way, Flyers take Game 1. Game 2, the Flyers again lead 3-1 after 1 and then 5-3 after 2. Clarke, however, was having a little trouble containing Stastny when they were out there together. The Flyers then led 7-5 with time winding down, thanks to another huge game from Barber as well as Bridgman, Hill, and Linsman. With 1:14 left, Clarke scores an empty netter to make it 8-5. And with 32 seconds left, another massive brouhaha erupts. 148 combined penalty minutes in this one. Regardless, the Flyers take Game 2. Huge 2-game series lead, and they're on the verge of committing a sweep. Game 3, we ship to Le Colisée in Quebec City, the first NHL playoff game to be played there. Nordiques fans are excited regardless of the deficit. The goaltenders are the story in this one as Rick St. Croix of the Flyers and Bouchard play great net. But alas, it's Bouchard who plays even better. Gets a 32-save shutout and a 2-0 win. The Nords are still in this thing. Game 4 still in Quebec. Clarke is having a rough outing, but regardless, they lead 3-1 after 1, then after 2. Then the Nords tie it late in the third and just 37 seconds in overtime. Dale Hunter scores and the series is tied. What is happening here? Well, now it's the 5th and deciding game back home in the Spectrum, and it's 1-1 after 1, and the Flyers take a 2-1 lead after 2. The defense is playing great. Clarke plays pretty good. The hero, however, is Kenny Linsman, and the Flyers win 5-2. They take the series in 5 in the 5th and final game. Clarke played fine enough here, but it was mostly an uneventful series for our hero. He wasn't really defending too much against Stastny, and when he did, he seemed to be having trouble keeping up with the Stars. But he still held his team to a win, and the Flyers move on to the quarterfinals. In the second round awaiting the Flyers is indeed the Calgary Flames, as indeed in Atlanta. After 8 years, the team moved north of the border to the city of Calgary and became an instant hit. The team finished with a really good record of 39-27-14 for 92 points, their best regular season in franchise history. Now, general manager Cliff Fletcher always had an eye for talent, and this team has been pretty consistent most of their history, but in their 6 playoff appearances saw the team never win a single series. Well, that changed this year. They swept out the Chicago Blackhawks in 3 straight games. Head coach Al McNeil, despite spending most of his career coaching in the minor leagues, does have his name on the Stanley Cup as a coach, leading with 71 Habs. He's also won 3 Calder Cups with the Habs minor league affiliate, the Nova Scotia Voyageurs of the AHL, so the man knows how to win. The Flames had a scorching power play, second in the league, only behind the Islanders, and their penalty kill was ranked 4th. The season series between the two is split 2-2-0. This could get pretty interesting. Speaking of interesting, one of the most highly skilled playmaking centers in the game, Swedish sensation Kent Nilsson, leads the way for the Flames, breaking out huge in his final days in the WHA with the Jets, winning an AFCO Cup to boot. His time in the NHL has already been spectacular. Long before Pavel Datsyuk, he was given the nickname Magic Man, as he could just make anything happen. 49 goals, 82 assists for 131 points, which was 3rd best in the league. His 82 assists were second only behind Gretzky's record-setting 109. His 20 power play goals were tied for 4th best. His 8 game winners were 5th best. And he just missed out on being a finalist for both the Hart Trophy and the Lady Byng, coming in 4th for both. They had another highly skilled centerman who could make big plays, and that was Guy Chouinard. He had 31 goals, 52 assists for 83 points, but he did that in just 52 games, missing 28 due to injury, but he's good and healthy here for these playoffs. He was also very good, plus 18 throughout the season. The Flames also had a nasty customer up front in winger Willie Putt, a towering winger who can power to the net, had 38 goals, 30 assists for 68 points. He also had 239 penalty minutes, which was fifth most in the league. He was also fourth in the league in shooting percentage. Also on this team, they had Bob McMillan, who scored 28 goals and was a tremendous penalty killer. Don Lever, who notched 26 goals and was a tremendous checker along the boards, and got votes for the Selke. Also getting votes for the Selke was former Flyer Bill Clement. Eric Vale was a reliable goal scorer himself, scoring 28. Also helping out this core was Bobby Gould, Ken Houston, Jamie Hislop, and a sizable rookie by the name of Jim Poplinski. Leading the defense was top prospect Paul Reinhardt, who had an excellent sophomore campaign. 18 goals, 49 assists for 67 points, and a plus 10. He was good at trying to take on top forwards, and he was very obviously offensively potent with speed and great setup abilities, and was good on the power play. Big Brad Marsh brings a hard-nosed traditional style to the team. Veteran Phil Russell adds toughness, while another veteran, Bob Murdoch, had an excellent year, brings further depth. Rowdy Randy Holt was one of the nastiest and toughest players in the league, and capping off this core was longtime star in his native Finland, Pekka Rautakalio. In goal, the Flames had some of their problems this year, especially with the early struggles of Dan Bouchard, who I mentioned earlier, who they traded, but they brought it together eventually, and Pat Riggin, 21-year-old from Kincardine, Ontario, had a good record of 21-16-4. His 3.83 goals against average isn't much to write about, and neither is his 83 save percentage. This is actually, okay, to be fair, decent enough in this era. Now, indeed, Reggie Lemelin had much better numbers and did play in the Hawks series, but he won't last long here. Either way, this has the makings of a great series. Let's see what happens. Game 1 at the Spectrum, and the Flyers are a well-oiled machine here. St. Croix is playing great net, and the Flyers hit Lemelin with a barrage of shots, and sure enough, it's 3-0 late in the second. As Holmgren, Linsman, and Barber play at Bobby Clarke is killing Nilsson in the face-off circle. Then Clarke gets it back to Terry Murray, who parks it home for an assist. 4-0 Flyers, that's how it stays. They take Game 1. Clarke's Warrior Heart was beaten fast in this one. Game 2, both teams switch goalies. Peters for the Flyers, and now Riggin comes in for the Flames. It's a seesaw game at first. The period ends 2-2, and Clarke having difficulty with Nilsson. And the Flames scorch Peters in the second and take a 5-2 lead after 2. The Flyers get 2 back, and they bombard Riggin, but he won't let any more in. Flames win 5-4. Series is tied at 1. Game 3 at the Stampede Corral in Calgary, and their fans are very excited. And the Flames defense cannot contain the Flyers, who launch an all-in attack on Riggin, which is great, and our hero is huge in that. He's played a good game, but Riggin played better. He stopped 47 of 48 Flyers shots. In a 2-1 Flames win, and the Flames take a 2-1 series lead. My goodness. Game 4, the Flyers need a way to solve this hot goalie, and it looks bad. It's 3-1 Flames after 2. McLeish scored to bring them back to within 1. Just over 2 minutes later, Reed Bailey gets up to Tim Kerr, who sets up Bobby for a goal. The game is tied. 37 seconds later, the Flames retake the lead, and again, they later extend it to 2 goals, 5-3. But 1:11 after that, Wilson starts, Clarke continues, Barber finishes, 5-4. Nearly 4 minutes left, there's still time, but nope, it's not enough. Well, the Flyers do solve Riggin. St. Croix actually didn't play that great in net for the Flyers, and they're on the verge of elimination, down 3-1. Game 5, however, the Flames are without Nilsson, but it's a downtrodden feeling in Philly, but that ends very soon. They torch Riggin and go up 4-0 in the first and lead 5-1 after 1 thanks to Brian Propp's hat trick. Then after 2, the Flyers lead 7-2. Our hero is doing whatever he needs to do to keep the Flames away from getting any momentum. They lead 7-3 in the third when Cochran gets the puck out to Bobby, who beautifully sets up Flockhart for a goal to make it 8-3 and a 9-4 win. The Flyers sending a harsh message to the Flames. We're not dead yet. Game 6, however, the Flyers are still on the verge of elimination as we head back to Calgary, but their fans in the corral feel they're about to witness something huge as Nilsson returns. The Flames, however, have lost hope in Riggin and start Lemelin in this one. St. Croix for the Flyers. He's playing a huge game. The game is scoreless after 1. After Ken Linsman scored a goal to open the scoring in the second, just 60 seconds later, off the next shit, defenseman Frank Bass says, and Bobby on goal, he scores! It's 2-0 Flyers. The Flames don't give up, but the Flyers win 3-2. Bobby playing tremendous hockey here. The series is tied 3-3. We are going to a 7th and deciding game. Again, Game 7, the Spectrum is now site Could the Flyers be going to their 8th semifinal series in 9 seasons? The Flames make a gamble and start rigging, and it's paying off. The Flames lead 2-0 after 1. Flyers are throwing everything they have at Riggin. Our heroes making plays, but nobody can capitalize. Then late in the second, it's 3-0. But 49 seconds after that, Barber finally gets the Flyers on the board. It's 3-1 after 2. As the third period commences, the Flyers try to add pressure, but to no avail. The Flames add another goal early in the third, and they win this 4-1. The Flyers are eliminated in 7 games, despite the comeback to force this 7th game. This was considered a bit of an upset, as even though the Flames are just 5 points back to the Flyers in the regular season, their lack of playoff experience made them underdogs. And Clarke, to his credit, played quite well here. 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points, and a +3. And for the most part did well handling Ken Nilsson other than a game or two. But the Flames persevered. They would go on to lose to the North Stars, however, in 6 games in the semifinals. The Stars, in turn, would lose to the Islanders in the Cup final. Bobby Clarke in his 12th season in 1980-81 had 19 goals, 46 assists for 65 points in all 80 games played. The LCB line was again reunited. First with the Rifle, who set up 11 of 19 of Bobby's goals, more than half, all but 8. The two collaborated for 12 assists and overall teamed up for 36 goals. Clarke set up Barber 15 times out of his huge 43 goals that year, and together worked to produce 31 goals. Clarke at times was still shifted with Brian Propp, and also clicked well this year with defenseman Ben Wilson. Clarke garnered some votes for the Selke Trophy this year for the league's top defenseman forward, getting 3 votes, tied for 18th. However, this is the first time after 10 consecutive seasons, and the first time since his rookie year, he didn't garner one single vote for the Hart Trophy as league MVP. Okay, so it wasn't Clarke's most eventful season, but he's still an asset as he always is. But again, that didn't stop skeptics from pointing out he's, quote, on the decline and can't get his full game back. Crazy the difference a year makes, huh? But he scored his 1,000th career point in true Clarke fashion, finished with +60, and some said Clarke was very careless this year, taking a lot of bad penalties. And he did indeed set a career high in penalty minutes with 140, being his previous mark of 136 set in 1975-76. And yes, he get some votes for the Selke. But whether you believe it or not, it is time to wonder, is the end coming sooner than later? Well, here we are, season number 13 for Bobby Clarke. The Flyers are still considered a very strong contender. However, GM Keith Allen was not going to become complacent. In a move that actually saddened many Flyers fans, they parted ways with Rick McLeish in the offseason and sent him to the Whalers with a couple other players and 3 draft picks. In return, they'd get Ray Allison, Fred Arthur, and a couple draft picks themselves. Also, there were some issues with Mel Bridgman. He was not signing a new deal and therefore would be stripped of his captaincy and it would be given to Bill Barber. The team added at Finnish import Ilkka Sinisalo, but things weren't all that great. After all, this is the season of Cooperalls. Yes, these gaudy long hockey pants will be worn by the Flyers this season. Actually, despite being designed and invented by the Cooper Hockey Company, these are CCM Pro Packs, but why? Anyway, our hero, for reasons I tried to research but actually couldn't find, Clarke was left off the 1981 Team Canada Cup team, which we lost to the Soviets. Also, big changes in the NHL, divisional realignment, and new playoff format. Flyers would still be in the Patrick division along with the Islanders, Rangers, and Capitals, but now joining them, the Pittsburgh Penguins. The new playoff format was the top 4 teams in each division would make the playoffs, and for the Flyers, now in the Wales Conference, the Wales Conference Finals would pit the winners of the Adams and Patrick division against each other. This format would stay in hockey for the next 12 seasons. But regardless, he's ready for this season. And what is around the corner for the Cooperall-wearing Flyers? Hey, Clarke went on a tear to start the season in October. The team went unbeaten in their first 8 games of the season, beating with a tie against the Dead Things. They throttled Pittsburgh 8-2. Clarke had a goal and a helper. It was a home-and-home series against Mike Garner, Dennis Merrick, and the Capitals. He had an assist in the win on the road, and then at home he scored a power play marker and assist on 2 Reggie Leach goals for a 3-point night in a 5-2 win. He then assisted on Leach's game winner against the Stars, then got a win over the Nordiques. On October 24th on the road against the Blues, what a night! An assist each for Bridgman and Wilson just 3 minutes into the game.
then one each for his line mates Barber and Leach. 4 apples in a 6-3 win. He still got it. However, after a win against the Red Wings, Clarke did have an assist against the Habs in an 11-2 loss, where his temper got the best of him with success to game misconduct. But be that as it may, he bounced back against the Pens in a 6-4 win with a goal and an assist. They ended the month with a loss to the Canucks, but what a start. 3 goals, 11 assists, 14 points, 11 games, and a monster plus 11. November wasn't so great on the other hand. The loss against Vancouver on Halloween night began a 4-game losing streak where Clarke would play lackluster and would only garner an assist. They broke the streak with a win over Mark Howe and the Whalers on the 12th. Clarke playing a beauty with 2 assists, one on Wilson's opening goal and another to Linsman's shorthander in a 5-3 win. Then after getting shut out by the lowly Leafs, the Flyers stunned the 2-time Cup champion Islanders 5-4. Clarke had 2 assists in that one, including one on Flockhart's game winner. Around this time, the Flyers parted with Mel Bridgman to Calgary for defenseman Brad Marsh. Not a terrible deal at all. But they lose 3 in a row, Clarke with an assist in that stretch. And then it was back-to-back wins over Toronto and Boston, Clarke with an empty netter in the latter. But then they'd lose the Stars to end the month. A goal, 6 assists, 7 points in 12 games, and a -5. Yikes. On December 1st of 1981, the Flyers hosted a very highly improved Winnipeg Jets team that had already won more games this year than they did in the last. And Clarke went toe-to-toe with rookie sensation Dale Hawerchuk, who I've covered on this channel, and was a very tight competitive game. The 18-year-old junior star had an assist, but was a -1 while Clarke had a goal and was a +1 in the 2-1 win. That goal against the Jets began a 7-game point streak for Clarke. It was an assist in a 6-1 thrashing over a team that ended their season last year, Calgary. A shorthanded goal and a 5-2 win over the Dead Things. Then a huge game over the Blues, just 121 after Barber opened the scoring. Poor Gary Edwards. C to L to B, 2-0 Flyers. It was 2-2, however, after one. The second, Clarke teams with some newcomers. Bob Hoffmeyer gets the puck out to Bobby, who sets up Mark Battelle. And again, the Flyers lead 3-2 and begin to run away with this game. They led 7-2 in the third. Sinasalo goes in on goal and sets up Bobby for a biggie. 8-2, Flyers win. 1 goal, 2 apples, 3 points. Clarke is named second star of the game. Then it was a goal and a helper and a road on a 4-1 win over the Penguins, giving the Flyers their 5th win in a row. Then it was a home-and-home series with the Rangers. First at home, Clarke got 2 assists, but was also a -4. The win streak came to an end with a 5-3 loss, snapping the Flyers' hot streak. But hey, they bounced back on the road in a 7-3 win. Clarke with an assist on that one. In 7 games, he had 4 goals, 7 assists, 11 points. It was a +3. The Flyers went 6-1-0 in this stretch. The win over the Rangers began another winning streak, this one in 4 games. Clarke would score a goal against the Blackhawks as well in that stretch. After a loss to the Islanders and a win over Calgary, Clarke had an assist in a loss to the powerhouse Oilers to end the month. The same game where Gretzky scored his record 50th goal in 39 games. December, he had 13 points in 13 games. The new year of 1982 started out very well for our hero, taking on 2 teams who were powerhouses the year prior, but big disappointments this season. First on the road in St. Louis, he had 2 assists in a 5-3 win over the Blues. Then back home against 2/3 of the Triple Crown line, Marcel Dion and Dave Taylor, along with young defenseman Larry Murphy, Clarke had a goal and a helper. His goal tied the game with 2:47 to play en route to a 5-3 comeback win. But then it was a pair of back-to-back losses to the Isles. A pair of rough games for him to boot. But Clarke roared back. First on January 10th against the lowly Rockies at home. Put this pathetic bunch in their place, but they did put up a good fight. Clarke assisted on a Tim Kerr goal earlier in the game, but the Flyers trailed 4-3 after 2, but 5:07 in the third, Clarke got the puck back to Marsh at the point, who sets up Greg Adams for a goal to tie the game. 47 seconds later, Hoffmeyer to Adams to Clarke. He scores on former teammate Phil Meyer. That would prove to be the game winner in a 5-4 win, 3 points, first-star honors for our hero. 4 days later, against Gretzky, Curry, Messier, Guffey, Anderson, Lowe, and the Oilers, the Flyers stunned this powerhouse team with an 8-2 thrashing. Wow, Clarke assisting on Kerr's opening goal. Clarke then assisted on a Paul Holmgren goal in a 4-2 win over the Habs at the Forum. Then back home hosting Bork Middleton and this excellent Bruins team. Just 19 seconds after Flockhart opened the scoring, Clarke made a play that allowed Adams to set up Kerr. 2-0 Flyers. The game was tied 3-3 after 1. 2:05 in the third, however, Adams set up Bobby for the go-ahead marker, and it was 4-3, and later 5-3 after 2. And early in the third, Flockhart made it 6-3, and just 38 seconds later, Reggie to Greggy to Bobby. Oh, Rogie Vachon likely relieved he'd never have to face Clarke again after this, as he'd retire at the end of the year. The Flyers trounced the Bruins 7-3. 2 goals, an assist, 3 points. First star honors the Flyers on a 4-game winning streak. Clarke, 3 goals, 5 assists for 8 points in the stretch, 2 points a game. So many people had written him off before the season began. Yeah, things were great. Then the Flyers extended their unbeaten streak to 5 games with a tie over the Nordiques. But then Clarke was diagnosed with a broken foot. I mentioned this in the other videos that Clarke has always been reasonably healthy in his career. The longest he ever missed in one season was 9 games in 1977-78. And in his prior 12 seasons, he's only missed 19. This injury is going to cause him to miss 18. Timing was crazy because a day after his last game before the diagnosis, the Flyers had just acquired Leafs superstar Darryl Sittler. The tie against the Nordiques actually began a 9-game winless streak. Clarke missed all of February. The Flyers were in rough shape. Head coach Pat Quinn was under fire, and so was Bobby as an assistant. The Flyers went a terrible 4-10-4 without him on the ice. Much to the relief of many, including Flyers fans, no doubt, Clarke returned on March 2nd, 1982, hosting Howard Chuck and the Jets. He got a rousing ovation, and our hero didn't let the Jets push him around, garnering 6 penalty minutes, a hooking call, a tripping call, and a stick jousting contest with Dave Christian. The Flyers would lose 7-6. But then Clarke went on an 8-game scoring streak, literally averaging 1 point a game. First, he assisted on former Canada Cup 76 teammate Darryl Sittler's goal in a tie with the Rangers. Then it was an assist against Denis Savard and the Blackhawks in a loss. Then it was a goal against the Caps in a 7-1 win. In another tie with the Rangers, he had an assist. Then he had another apple in a win over crappy Colorado. Then it was an assist each in back-to-back losses to the Caps and Rangers. And then another helper in a tie with the Hawks. 1 goal, 7 assists for 8 points in 8 games. He was also a big +7 to boot. However, after the tie with the Hawks, Pat Quinn was fired as head coach, and so were his assistants, including Clarke. Bob McCammon, yes, the same Bob McCammon that Pat Quinn replaced, was rehired as coach, as he had been in the AHL with the Maine Mariners. And, well, to be frank, he knew a lot of talent in this club. Clarke didn't dwell on his dismissal as a coach and stride forward. Then up next was a home-and-home series with the Whalers. First in Hartford on March 20th, where Clarke went toe-to-toe in the face-off circle with a red-hot young prospect first-round draft pick named Ronnie Francis. Clarke schooled the youngster, who did have a goal and a helper, but was a -2. The Flyers won 5-2. Clarke was a +1. Then the very next day, Clarke schooled the future Ronnie franchise again in a 5-3 win at home, where Clarke had 2 assists and was a big +3. Francis was pointless and a -2. Next up, it was a home-and-home series of division rivals Washington. The Flyers lost the first game at home, and hitting the road, it looked like it was going to be another loss. The Flyers trailed 4-1 past the midway point of the third, in a heated game that saw 240 penalty minutes. Al Hill scored to bring the Flyers to within 2. 17 seconds later, out the next draw, Sinasalo sends in Bobby Clarke for the goal. Suddenly it's 4-3. 2:12 later, Sinasalo to Barber to Clarke. His second goal of the game ties it with 6:05 remaining. The Flyers get this tie in a huge clutch effort from our hero. He was named second star of the game for his efforts. The Flyers would get a win over the Rangers, then tie the Isles, where Clarke had an assist, then had a goal in a loss to the Isles. To end the season on April 4th, the Flyers hosted a pathetic Rick Vive, Boreas Salming, and a pathetic Leafs team, whom I've covered on this channel. Leading 1-0 in the first, Watson gets the puck to our hero, sets up Timmy Kerr for the goal. 2-0 Flyers after 1. It was 3-1 after 2. Kerr made it 4-1, and then just over 2 minutes later, Billy to Bobby to Sinny Salo. 5-1 Flyers. The Flyers then went up 6-1, and then Bobby to Billy to Timmer. Yes, indeed, 7-1 is how it would end. 3 assists and a +4. A monster game for Clarke. Again, his named second star. Big way to end the season. The Flyers finished 38, 31, and 11 for 87 points. Third place in the Patrick Division. First time they finished lower than second in their division since the 72-73 season. Regardless of this bizarre year, the Flyers earned their 10th straight postseason berth. And now, it's playoff time. And in the opening round, the Patrick Division semifinals, the best-of-5 series, the Flyers will renew acquaintances with the New York Rangers. The Rangers finished second in the Patrick Division with a really good year, 39, 27, and 14 for 92 points. Freddie Sherrill was gone, but Craig Patrick was the team's new go-getting GM, while the man behind the miracle,
Herb Brooks was now the head coach. The Rangers' special teams weren't overly strong, but Brooks got quite a bit out of this bunch. The Flyers actually went 2-4-2 against the Rangers this season, losing the season series, and this Rangers team had a lot going for them. Mike Rogers was acquired from Hartford in the offseason and instant success in the Big Apple with 38 goals, 65 assists for 103 points, his third straight 100-point season. His 31 even strength goals were tied for 10th in the league. He got some votes for the Lady Byng Trophy. He is an extraordinary playmaker, and at times was overlooked because of his size. Then there is Broadway Ron Duguay. He had a superb year coming off an injury-plagued season from the year prior, had 40 goals, 36 assists for 76 points in 72 games. His goals led the Rangers and was also a very good plus 18, and as long as that hair stayed in place, he wasn't afraid to get physical. He also played in his first NHL All-Star game. Also, Herb Brooks brought some of his Miracle on Ice people with him, and that was centerman Mark Pavlik. Again, many saw his size as an issue, but he had an excellent rookie year in the NHL. 33 goals, 43 assists for 76 points, came in 5th in Calder Trophy as the league's top rookie, and was a very impressive plus 19. Also on this forecourt, Don Maloney, despite injury issues, is very productive when healthy. They acquired Robbie Fatorik from Quebec to add a lot more depth. Ed Johnstone had a big year with 30 goals. Plus, you had role players such as Rod McClanahan, Dave Silk, Cam Connor, Mikko Leinonen, and Mike Allison. They lend a big hand. Leading the defense, Barry Beck was on fire this year. Not only was he a well-respected captain, he proved to be a hard-working, hard-hitting, and just an all-around excellent defenseman. Despite missing 20 games and playing in 60, he still got votes for the Norris Trophy as league's top defenseman and came in 7th. Then he came in 6th for Hart Trophy voting as league MVP to boot. And he had solid offensive numbers with 38 points, finished with a plus 20. Joining him was Finnish import Reijo Ruotsalainen. He made a big splash in his NHL season. Dave Maloney was still providing toughness and leadership. Tom Laidlaw was a towering presence. 15-year veteran Carol Vadnais is still very impactful. Running up the court was Andre Dore, as Ron Greschner was still out with injury. In goal, the Rangers make the choice to go with Eddie Mio. He finished with a record of 13-6-5, not bad at all, and had a goals against average of 3.56, which was 10th best in the league, and a save percentage of 885, which was 9th. He's shown a lot of skill in the past, but hasn't had always the best defenses to work with him. But either way, this rivalry writes another chapter. Here we go. Game 1 at Madison Square Garden in New York. The Flyers look sharp. Pete Peters is amazing in net, makes 35 saves on 36 shots. Sittler has 2 goals. Barber has 2 helpers. Clarke plays quite well defensively on the check. And the Flyers stun the Rangers 4-1 on the road and take the first game. Game 2 looks great early. 48 seconds into the game, Billy to Ben to Bobby. 1-0 Flyers early. That's as good as it would get. The Flyers were destroyed 7-3. As Lannon had 6 assists for the Rangers. Other unlikely heroes included McClanahan and Silk, taking this experienced Flyers team apart. The series is tied 1-1. Game 3 moved to the Spectrum in Philly, and oh boy, those pesky penalty-killing boys are at it again. Barber gets the puck out to Clarke, and Bobby scores a shorthanded marker. 1-0 Flyers. It was 3-0 after 1. But then they collapsed. It was 3-3 after 2. And with 1:09 to play, Cam Connor scores to the Rangers. They take Game 3 and take a 2-1 series lead, putting the Flyers on the verge of elimination. Game 4, our hero and his boys are fighting for their season. And it's bad early on. The Flyers trail 3-0 early in the second, later 4-1. But Hoffmeyer sets up Bobby. They got the Flyers closer, cutting the lead in half, but they still trail 5-2 after 2. Flyers then trailed 6-2 in the third, and the Spectrum was silent and all hope seemed lost. But on a power play, Holmgren to Sittler, over to Bobby, who scores. The lead is cut in half, but time keeps ticking. And then with those 6:27 to play, Clarke to Pauly to Darryl. It's 6-4. The Flyers are killing the penalty, and yep, the two are at it again. And this time it's Clarke sitting in Barber for the goal. The Spectrum erupts with 3:41 to play. They only trail by a goal. There's still time. Clarke is playing a huge game here, and he presses the equalizer. Eddie Mio of the Rangers is facing fire, but he's turning everything back. The clock keeps counting down, and the Rangers get an empty netter with 7 seconds left. They win 7-5 and take the series 3-1. This is only the second time in Bobby Clarke's career that the Flyers have appeared in the playoffs. They failed to win a series. The last time was all the way back in 1971. But regardless, Bobby Clarke still played very well here, and his epic performance in Game 4 with 4 points, trying with all his might to save his team's season once again, is another example of just how great he really is. Overall, 4 goals, 2 assists for 6 points, a +3. Can't really blame him here. Can't really blame a lot of people. The Rangers were simply the better team in this series. The Rangers would go on, however, in the next round of the Patrick Division Final, get beaten out by the Islanders in 6 games, and the Islanders, in turn, would win their 3rd straight Stanley Cup. His season wasn't quite over yet, though. Clarke, along with Barber, Sittler, and Prop, represented Team Canada at the 1982 World Ice Hockey Championships. Sinisalo played for his native Finland, while Thomas Eriksson, who is under the Flyers' umbrella but didn't really play for them this season, was part of the Swedish team, while forward Tom Goran suited up for Team USA. Since 1977, Canada has been back at the World Championships, sending their best players from teams that either didn't make the playoffs or were eliminated early. This Canadian team was stacked. It was actually the only time that Bobby Clarke and Wayne Gretzky would play on the same team. Clarke played more of a defensive role in the tournament, but he did very well in that regard. He got himself a bronze medal as a result, in what would be his last international competition as a player. In 1981-82, Bobby Clarke scored 17 goals, 46 assists for 63 points in 62 games. This is the first time he's averaged a point a game since 1977-78, at 2 points less than last season in 18 games less than last season. It was quite the mixed bag this season, with lines being shuffled all over the place as the Flyers would struggle. But hey, he was working with a lot of great players, including some of the usual. And Reggie Leach indeed is tops again. Clarke set up 11 out of 26 of Reggie Leach's goals, the 2 team for 7 assists, and overall teamed up for 22 goals. The man who set Clarke up the most was actually minor league call-up tough man Greg Adams, who assisted on 6 Bobby Clarke goals, more than a third. And with Bill Barber, Clarke he teamed up 16 times for goals, not their usual high production. Clarke was set up by 12 different players for assists, and set up 17 different players for goals, and collaborated with 19 different players for assists. Also, he found a good chemistry with Iko Sinisalo and Tim Kerr whenever he was put with them. Bobby Clarke registered 1 vote for the Selke Trophy this year, tying him for 22nd in overall voting as the league's top defensive forward. Truth be told, this season definitely told the world this man is not finished. Even after suffering a broken foot and even losing his job as assistant coach, he came back and was still very productive. Not only did he average a point a game for the first time in 4 seasons, but he still showed his passion for the game hasn't run out. He was also a very good +28. He still thrived when the chips were down. In addition to getting the vote for the Selke and making the playoffs for the 10th straight season, his reputation as one of the best international players of his time was cemented with a bronze medal at the only World Championship tournament he would play in. Ha! People should know better by now. Don't count Bobby Clarke out. Clarke's turn as a player/assistant coach did have its good fortune, even if it didn't last and didn't completely succeed. Through his ever-changing game, that is the game of hockey which he loves, he is rolling with the changes and doing everything he can going into the 1982-83 season. Even with those damn Cooperalls. Anyway. After the mystery of a season that was last year, Keith Allen made some more big changes. They parted ways with goalie Pete Peters to Boston in exchange for defenseman Brad McCrimmon. They will also be putting their faith in Swedish import Pelle Lindberg as well as St. Catharines native Bob Frosten net. But then they made a monster of a deal with Hartford as they dealt Greg Adams in a 1st and 3rd round draft pick from 1983 and Kenny Lindsman, who was their leading scorer last season, in a big shocker for a 3rd round draft pick, but also all-star defenseman Mark Howell. And to top things off, Reggie Leach is gone. He has made his way to the Detroit Red Wings. He's been Clarke's go-to man along with Barber for nearly a decade. What will this do to Bobby's production? Well, Bob McCammon has given another shot to coach this team. Will he succeed this time? Well, also the Flyers have a new division rival. Yes, indeed, the Rickety Rockies have now become the Dreary Devils. That's right, of New Jersey, that is. Making the Patrick Division the only one with 6 teams, while the rest still have 5. Can our hero lead them to a better path? Well, let's find out. On October 7, 1982, the Flyers opened the season at home to an excellent Quebec Nordiques team. They were coming off a miracle run of the Wales Conference Finals last season, and the Stastny brothers, Peter, Anton, and Marion, lead the way along with all-star winger Michel Goulet and Dirty Dale Hunter. And just 33 seconds into the season, Allison to Clarke to Barber. It's 1-0 Flyers, but it's tied 2-2 after 1, and 5-4 Flyers after 2. After Prop made it 6-5, 23 seconds later, Ray to Bobby to Billy, 7-5. Then 12 seconds after that, Wilson gets out to Bobby, who sets up Ray for the goal. 8-5 en route to a 9-5 win. 3 assists on opening night. Bobby receives third star honor. This propelled his team in the right direction, as they would win back-to-back games in a home-and-home series with the Capitals. Bobby having an assist in the latter, also being one of the few people in the league to be able to best Doug Jarvis in a face-off circle. After a rough loss to the Rangers, they hosted the Sabres at home. Clarke assisted on Mark Howe's short-handed marker, and Ray Allison's insurance marker in their 4-2 win, also making the night difficult for old rival Gilbert Perreault. 2 days later, on the 16th at Le Colisée in Quebec, the Flyers found themselves down 2-0, but Clarke scored a goal to begin a comeback, and it was 2-2 after 2. 43 seconds to the third, the Clarke goal again comes back with a huge solo effort to make it 3-2 en route to a 4-3 win. Clarke also took hold of Peter Stastny a great deal in this game. But then the Flyers would lose 3 straight. First to the Devils. Yeesh. Then a tight game at the Habs where Clarke assisted on Philly's only goal. The third loss was against the Penguins, which was still a huge night for Bobby, however. October 23rd, 1982 would be his 1,000th career NHL game. Indeed, the path that began on October 11, 1969 leads all the way to this night, another big accomplishment for our hero. The next day, the Flyers were able to bounce back against the dead thing Red Wings. At 3:05 into the game, Reggie Leach, for the first time in a long time, was booed for scoring a goal in the Spectrum. But then later on, Glenn Cochran began a play that got the puck to Lindsey Carson, who set up Bobby Clarke. The game was tied 1-1 after 1. Just under 3 minutes into the third, power play, Paulie to Bobby to Ronnie. The Flyers led 2-1, and then Beth to Clarke, who magnificently sets up Holmgren 3-1 en route to a 7-4 win, a huge 3-point night for our hero. A goal, 2 helpers, what a game. Clarke looking sharp out there to start the season as he is dead focused and producing huge as a result. 4 days later, it was their state rivals, the Penguins, who were off to a very disappointing start. After Tim Kerr opened the scoring 1:14 later, Clarke gets it to Dvorak, who finds Carson for the goal. 2-0 Flyers, they lead 3-1 after 1. After Holmgren scored to make it 4-1, 15 seconds into the seconds, 16 seconds after that, Paulie to Lindsay to Bobby, 5-1 Flyers, and then a power play, you say, Billy to Ronnie to Bobby, 6-1 Flyers, leading 7-2 in the third. Let's see, Billy, check, Bobby, double check, Ronnie, check and mate, 8-2 Flyers en route to a major 9-2 win. Bobby Clarke, 2 netters, 2 apples, 4 points. What a night, first star honors again. Clarke once again showing if you write him off, he'll just start a new chapter to spite ya. 7 points in 2 games. Well, I'll make that 8 points in 3 games as he had an assist and a loss to Smith, Cicerelli, and the Stars. But wow, what a start. 5 goals, 12 assists for 17 points in 13 games and a +8 in October. The Flyers were still a little sluggish, however, in November, but looked okay so far this season, while Clarke continued to roll. In November, he had 2 goals, 10 assists for 12 points in 12 games and was a +4. He had a great game against the defending Campbell Conference champion Canucks on November 4th, but the Flyers lost 4-3. Clarke had a goal and a helper. Then in a big game against the 3-time defending Cup champion, the division rival Islanders, Clarke had another goal and assist in a huge 6-3 win. They would tie the Islanders, and then they would get crushed by Buffalo. Clarke had an assist in the loss. They then took it to the Rangers, 7-3, Clarke assisting on 2 goals for Lindsey Carson. He would then have an assist in each of the next 5 games. First in a win over Calgary, where he did a good job containing Kent Nilsson. Then one in a loss to the Habs, and assisting on Prop's insurance marker in a win over the Blues. Then one in a tie with Boston, another in a win over the Kings, where Dion couldn't escape Clarke all night. They ended the month with a tie with the Canucks. Flyers, however, began December with a huge win on the road in Edmonton over the high-powered Oilers. Clarke versus Gretzky, and while they both had 2 assists, Gretzky was a -1 as the Flyers won 4-2. Clarke also seemingly getting to Gretzky most of the game, especially near the end, and also in the face-off circle. After a tie with the Penguins, Clarke would have an assist in each of the next 3 games. After a win, it was a home again against the Dead Things. But oddly enough, the Wings scored 9 seconds into the game, but the Flyers refocused, and on a power play, Howe to Dvorak, Bobby in the right position, he scores! It's 1-1 after 1. The Flyers took a 2-1 lead in the second, then on a power play, Miro to Bobo to Darryl. 3-1 Flyers, it was 4-1 after 2. Then just a minute and a half in the third period, Beth came up to Clarke, who gave it to Ray. It's a goal. It is 5-1. Then later in the period, Carson to Allison to Clarke. 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points again. What a game. Another biggie from Bobby.
As the Flyers win 7-2, many are truly taking notice how great he is playing this season. And after this, it was a tie with the Islanders, where Trottier couldn't get much going, so our hero had his number. Not to mention he also scored the tying goal at 5:38 to play. Then after a rough game against the no longer crappy Caps, they were ready to embark on a 6-game road trip. First on December 22nd in New Jersey against the Dreary Devils. He assisted on a Mark Howe shorthanded goal, as Clarke's penalty killing is top-notch this year. Clarke then again in a Boxing Day win over the Caps, assisted on a Mark Howe shorthanded goal and a 6-3 win. Then it was off to Detroit. Oh, those poor dead thing Red Wings. December 27th in the Motor City. And can you think of a better way to spend your holidays? Anyway. Well, much to the shock of the Flyers and many others, I'm sure, the Wings led 2-0 early on in the game. The Flyers started garnering momentum as Dvorak began a play that led to the stick of Ray Allison, led to Bobby Clarke, getting the Flyers in the game. They only trailed 2-1. But just 1:07 later, Red Wings star winger John Grodnik scores to restore the Red Wings' 2-goal lead. The Flyers are working hard desperately to get back in the game, and as the period winds down, Hoffmeyer finds Allison, who finds Bobby Clarke, his second goal of the game. The Flyers trail 3-2 after one would have momentum on their side going into the second period. And indeed, in the second, the Flyers are pressuring Wings goalie Greg Stephan just around to 7 minutes in. Sinasalo gets it to Bobby Clarke. Clarke with the natural hat-trick, the third natural hat-trick of his career, the 5th overall hattie of his career. And, with that, ties the game. But we are not done. Clarke's hat-trick gave the Flyers even more momentum, and they took a 5-3 lead after both power play and shorthanded goal each. And with time winding down in the second period, Clarke sets up Tom Gorentz for a goal to make it 6-3 Flyers, and giving Clarke his 4th point of the night. After 2 periods, the Flyers seem to have this one in hand. And just 1:21, Clarke goes in on goal with Carson, makes the setup, 2nd assist, 5th point of the night. Whoa, where is he getting this from? Former Flyer star Reggie Leach got one back for the Wings, but Allison scored his 2nd of the game. 8-4 Flyers win. Bobby Clarke, 5 points, 3 goals, 2 assists, a +3, easily the first star of the game. Indeed his 5th and what would be his final career hat trick. But he just kept on going. On December 30th, it was off to the Stampede Corral to face red-hot Lanny McDonald, Kent Nilsson, but the not-so-hot Flames. The game was tied 2-2 in the second period. Clarke, again, having Nilsson's number. And Clarke surveying the situation as he controls the puck, sees Allison, who sets up Paul Evans. 3-2 Flyers lead. And just 16 seconds into the next period, power play, Derry to Bobby to Markey. 4-2 Flyers lead. Clarke gets an empty netter to make it a 6-3 final. A goal, 2 assists, 3 points. 8 points in 2 games. 10 in the 4 games on this road trip so far. And the Flyers have won every one of them. Oh, easy for me to say. But what a December for Clarke. 7 goals, 13 assists, 20 points in 13 games and a +1. And as the new year would commence, Clarke was named captain once again of this club. The road trip continued into January. On New Year's Day 1983, Clarke got 2 assists against a struggling Blues squad. Had Bernie Fedorko spinning his wheels in this 4-1 win. Then it was out to Windy City to face a revamped red-hot Blackhawks team. Clarke assisting on Carson's game winner in a big 3-1 win. 6 games, 4 goals, 9 assists, 13 points, more than 2 points a game as the Flyers go undefeated on this road trip, winning 6 in a row. They extend the streak, however, to 8 in a row with a win at home over the Canucks, then 1 on the road over Hartford. And then at home against the Whalers, Clarke got 2 assists in an 8-4 win, including yet another shorthanded assist to Mark Howe. Then in an 8-1 win over the pathetic Penguins, he had a goal and a helper. 10 wins in a row. Clarke would go pointless in a tie with the Hawks and a win over the Rangers, which put them 12 games unbeaten. But the streak came to an end in a brutal loss to the Capitals. But then they won 5 in a row. Clarke played great in that stretch with 3 goals, 3 assists for 6 points, including a goal and a helper, and a win over the Rangers on the 23rd and doing the same against the Jets on the 27th. Clarke scored a goal to end the month in a tie against the Stars on the 29th, being a thorn in the side of Bobby Smith. For January, 5 goals, 9 assists, 14 points, +7 in 15 games. More good fortune in February, a goal, 10 assists for 11 points in 10 games, and a massive +11, including a goal and 2 assists on a February 2nd win in Winnipeg for 3 points and a +3. Also, Bobby scoring his 20th goal of the year, reaching that mark for the first time since the 77-78 season. Then it was a shutout win in LA where Bobby held old adversary Marcel Dion off the score sheet. Then a win over the Blues where Clarke had a helper. Though Dion would get the better of Clarke in Philly as the Flyers lost the King 5-4, ending their 9-game unbeaten streak, Clarke still had 2 assists in that one. Clarke then had an assist in a dominant 7-3 win over the Edmonton Oilers, and then 2 assists in a huge 8-5 win over the Rangers on the 19th, and was a +3. After a shutout win over the Devils, Clarke would have an assist each in a loss to the Sabres and a win over the Pens. They ended the month with a huge shutout win over the Islanders. Clarke again a thorn in the side of Trottier and Sutter in the faceoff circle. Going into March, the Flyers were riding high atop the Patrick Division, 14 points up on the 3-time defending Cup champion Islanders, and they've already punched their ticket to these playoffs. To start the month, however, on the road against the Toronto Maple Leafs, Clarke assisted on both goals in a 2-2 tie. Then garnered an assist in a win over the Devils, then had a goal and an assist in a tough loss to the Caps. Then 3 games later scored 2 goals in a 6-3 win over the Stars. And after back-to-back losses on the road to the Bruins and Rangers, Clarke having assist in a former, he garnered an assist in a win over the Habs. 4 games later, they began a home-and-home series with the Devils. They lost one. The fuck? Won the other, Clarke with an assist in each game. And they had clinched first place in the division. 6-time Bobby Clarke has led his team to first place in his given division. They would win 2 of their last 3 games of the season and finish the year 49, 23-8 for 106 points. A huge 19-point improvement over last season. And hey, get ready once again because it's playoff time. And once again in their way in the Patrick Division semifinals is the New York Rangers for the second straight year. We had a bit of a step down from the prior. They finished a decent 35-35-10 for 80 points. For 4th in the Patrick Division. They were still coached by Herb Brooks and still had a pretty subpar special teams. The Flyers edged their division rivals out in the season series with the 4-3-0 record. And this is the team that, however, beat the Flyers last year, and most of that talent is still intact. Mike Rogers saw his production slip, but still led the Rangers in scoring with 29 goals, 47 assists for 76 points in 71 games. His 5 shorthanded goals were tied for second in the league as well, and he got a vote for the Lady Byng Trophy. What a year Don Maloney had, 29 goals, 40 assists for 69 points, playing his first NHL All-Star game as a well-beloved figure among the Big Apple faithful, and showing great leadership skills in the process. But what a year from Mark Pavlik, 37 goals, 38 assists, 75 points, an amazing plus 20. He was second in the NHL in shooting percentage. He got a vote for the Hart Trophy, 3 votes for the Lady Byng, and 4 votes for the Selke. Anders Hedberg had a comeback year after only playing 4 games the prior season. They also got a lot out of Rob McClanahan. Ron Duguay had his struggles, as did Ed Johnstone, while Mikko Lennon played well. Mike Allison is ready to go despite injuries this season. Running at the core is Nick Foytu, Kent Eric Anderson, Mike Backman, and minor league call-out Gritty George McPhee. Their best defenseman this year was no doubt finishing in Puerto Rico Ruotsalainen. 16 goals, 53 assists for 69 points in 77 games and was a team-leading plus 27. Barry Beck also had another great year, again despite more injuries, missing 14 games this year. Ron Greschner only played 10 games all year, but is ready for these playoffs at least. Tom Laidlaw and Dave Maloney still contribute. They also have Scott Kleinendorf and Rick Chartraw, who doubles as a grinding forward and brings 4 cup rings with the Habs with him. They go with Eddie Mio in goal again. He had a modest 16-18-6 record. His 3.46 goals against average was 10th best. His 883 save percentage was meh, but he did garner 2 shutouts. The Rangers were a better team than the Flyers last year, but on paper that isn't the case this year, so here we go. Game 1, the Spectrum fans know their team is capable of going all the way, and they have the proper team to do it this year than they did last year. And they are rabid for this game, but it's bad. The Flyers are down 4-0 early in the second. Mio is a wall in net. Clarke can't get anything going. Down 5-1, they do make a bit of a game of it in the third, but lose 5-3, dropping the first game at home. Uh-oh. Game 2, the Rangers are without Rogers, and the Flyers need to capitalize on that. They led 1-0 after 1, and Clarke is playing much better here, as is the team overall. But then they trail 2-1 after 2 periods. They tie it early in the third, but then the Rangers go 4-2 suddenly, and the Flyers lose again. 4-3, dropping both games at home. This is not good. Well, Game 3 at the Big Apple, and the Flyers find themselves down 2-0 just 5.5 minutes in, but late in the period, Wilson gets it to Clarke, who fools Mio. And his first goal of this series got the 2-1, and the rest is a complete embarrassment. The Rangers win 9-3. And they sweep the heavily favored Flyers in 3 straight. The Flyers finished 26 points above this team in the regular season, and despite a competitive second game, this was just utterly ridiculous. Clarke played fine, but fine is about as good as it gets for him in this series. As for the rest of the team, it's pretty inexcusable. Very highly disappointing end to a great season. And the Rangers would, of course, lose again to the Islanders in 6 games in the next round, and again, the Isles would win the Stanley Cup. But back to his glorious regular season, however. Bobby Clarke scored 23 goals, 62 assists for 85 points, playing in all 80 games. Many wondered how his production would fare this year being without Reggie Leach, and for that matter not being shifted as often as usual with Bill Barber. Well, the answer was pretty damn good. He was a scattered bag of players he had chemistry with, but we'll start with Lindsey Carson, who assisted on 8 of Bobby's goals, more than a third. Also, Bobby set him up 15 times. That means all but 3 of the goals Carson scored that year were set up by Bobby Clarke. Together, they produced 27 goals. Meanwhile, he and Ray Allison teamed up for 21 goals, which included the 8 assists they collaborated on. Bobby really working well with the young talent on this team. He and Paul Holmgren also worked well together when being shifted. Clarke still did set up Barber for 7 goals, but that was early in the season. He and Sittler worked well together in special situations, and he and Mark Howe were just extraordinary, producing 18 goals together, and their special teams work was uncanny on both the power play and the penalty kill. Clarke was set up by 14 different players. He in turn set up 16 different players for goals and collaborated on assists with 16 as well. And further proof he's still one of the best passers and setup men in the game, he was back in the top 10 in assists, number 5, with his 62 apples that year. Just behind Paul Coffey of the Oilers, Peter Stastny of the Nords, Denny Savard of the Hawks, and Gretzky's record-setting 125 that year. This is the 9th time in his great career he has finished in the top 10 among assist leaders. And hey, look, he got votes for the Hart Trophy once again for the first time in a couple seasons as league MVP in 6th place with 9 votes. Teammate Mark Howe finished just above him in 5th place, while former teammate Pete Peters, now playing with the Bruins, was the first runner-up to winner Wayne Gretzky. This is the 11th time in 14 seasons that Clarke has received votes for the Hart, but award season wasn't quite done with him yet. Yes, indeed. Bobby Clarke is voted the league's top defensive forward, winning the Selke Trophy. His tireless work on the penalty kill, outdueling top centers and grinders in the face-off circle, plus his checking abilities against anyone of any caliber, earned him the award this year in the 6th season of existence. Also, Clarke has been in the thick of voting all but once. Indeed, this further emphasizes his work ethic on the ice as a great dynamic player. Indeed. Truly a remarkable testament to his never-dying heart was this 1982-83 season. Named the best two-way player in the game, something that he's been considered to be even before the Selke existed. Led his team in scoring for the 8th time, wins his 6th first-place division title, a massive plus 37, and led the Flyers to a resurgent regular season. He also played his 1,000th game, and to think he wasn't even supposed to play in one game at the beginning of his career. Proving he's still one of the best Apple men in the game, Bobby Clarke is truly still among the NHL's best, and this no doubt proved it once again, as he mentors young players and tries to keep this team going into the future. Well, here we are. Bobby Clarke enters the 1983-84 season, his 15th of his career. After the great season he's coming off of, the Flyers are still seen as contenders despite their disastrous playoff exit from last season. Clarke is now 34 years old. With the type of style he has played for most of his career, it does take a toll on the body. But how much exactly did our hero have left in him? And another change of the guard in Philly, Keith Allen, the man who built the success of this team, stepped down as general manager, focusing on his role as executive vice president of the club. Bob McCammon took the GM spot. The Flyers also parted with Ben Wilson, acquiring Doug Crossman from the Blackhawks. Another defenseman, Thomas Eriksson, would become a full-time part of their roster. Also, Ron Sutter of the famous Sutter Brothers dynasty would join the club for his rookie year. Brother Rich would join soon after. And they added a new two-way center in Dave Poulin. And the ever-popular Rick McLeish returned to this club after spending last season in Switzerland. The Flyers team had the right elements of a winner. To start the season, Clarke was looking sharp, and so were the Flyers, who went on a 5-game win streak to start the season. They opened the season at home against the Cats on October 6th, Clarke assisting on a Carson goal, and then getting a goal himself to help his team to a 4-1 win. After a win over the Habs, it was back home against the Pens. Clarke getting 2 helpers in a 7-1 triumph, setting up Kerr and Howe. Then, after a tight win over the Jets, they crushed the 4-time defending Cup champion Islanders 5-1 on the road, no less. A huge win, and Clarke scoring 2 goals late in that game. They would then go winless in 3, but then win 4 in a row. Clarke with an assist each against Toronto and Quebec. Then after another win over Quebec, it was 3-1 win over the Pens, where Clarke scored a shorthanded goal. He ended the month with an assist and a loss to the Isles.
and in total had 5 goals, 6 assists for 11 points in 13 games in October and was a big +7. The Flyers seemed to struggle a little bit in November. Bobby was doing all he could. 3 goals, 7 assists, 10 points in 12 games and a +2. After opening the month with an assist against the Kings, he was pretty quiet the next 3 games, but as he had done several games throughout his career, on Hockey Night in Canada on CBC, shined bright on the national stage in Canada with 2 assists over a sad-looking Leaf squad. After a loss to the Jets and a tie with the Stars, where he had an assist in the former, he had a historic happening against the Pens. He had already assisted on a Brian Propp goal, but now the regular season implemented 5-minute regular season overtime periods, and Clarke becomes the first player in Flyers history to score a regular season OT winner, very fitting I might add, in the big 5-4 win. He then had an assist each in a loss to the Islanders and a win over the Canucks. Then after beating Calgary, it was off to Edmonton to face the Campbell Conference champion Oilers. It was a back-and-forth game. Clarke had 2 goals. The game was a tie, and the 2 goals against the Oilers began a 7-game point streak for our hero heading into December. Indeed, on December 3rd, he opened the scoring with a 6-3 win over the Pens. Then he had an assist in a loss to the Whalers and a win over the Hawks. Then he had 2 goals and an 8-2 win over former teammate Mel Bridgman and the Drury Devils. He then had 2 assists in a very exciting 6-5 loss to the Sabres. Then in a shocking 9-4 thrashing over the Capitals, he had 2 more assists. 5 goals, 6 assists, 11 points in 7 games, and a big +6. Then came a home-and-home series with the Red Wings. First on December 17th at the Joe Louis Arena, where Clarke comes face-to-face with an 18-year-old fresh-faced rookie by the name of Steve Yzerman. Stevie Y didn't show any fear, but Clarke at times schooled the youngster. Clarke was pointless in the game, while Yzerman did have an assist, but was a -1 in a 3-3 tie. Back in Philly, it was young Stevie Y's turn to shine. He scored a goal with 1 second left to force OT and got his team another 3-3 tie. And he was also a +1, while Clarke was scoreless and a -1. He had an assist each in the next 3 games and a goal to end the month. December is very kind to Clarke. 4 goals, 9 assists for 13 points in 12 games and a +4. He still leads his team with that trademark fire and skill and leadership. Clarke's production, however, took a very dramatic dip in the new year as 1984 hit. Just 5 assists, no goals in 13 games. It was still +4. It started out well enough with 3 of those assists coming in one game on January 4th against the Penguins, 2 to Sittler and 1 to unknown Ross Fitzpatrick in a 7-5 win. Then the 4th assist came in a win over Winnipeg the next game. After beating Detroit, they'd lose 4 in a row. Clarke wasn't really playing bad, just seemed like he was non-existent. He broke his slump with the 5th assist of the month coming in a win over the Habs, which began a 4-game win streak. But then after a rough outing and a loss to the Canucks, in a tie with a very disappointing Chicago Club to end the month, Clarke was a very impactful +3. Also this month, the Flyers put away with Rick McLeish again. After starting the month with a tie against the struggling Habs squad, Clarke broke his 6-game scoring slump with an assist and a loss to Boston. Then the next day on February 5th, the Flyers hosted a lowly Leafs club led by Rick Vaive and Boreas Salming. And on the power play just past the midway point of the period, Howe backs it, Bobby takes it, and Poulin scores it to open up the gates. The Flyers were leading 3-0 in the second. When on another power play, at the point, Eriksson slides over to Howe, Bobby in perfect position and parks it past Palmateer, 4-0 after 2. Leading 6-0 in the third, Clarke sends in Tim Kerr for a goal. 3-point night for our hero, was named 3rd star of the game as first and second Poulin and Howe respectively also had 3-point nights. Still a huge re-emergence in this game. 3 games later, he'd score a goal in a loss to the Canucks, then 2 assists against the Blues and a helper against the Devils. Then 4 games later, in a big win over the Islanders, and then ended the month with the leap year win over the Oilers, having an assist in each of those games. Clarke had 2 goals, 8 assists for 10 points in 13 games in February, but was a -3. He also missed a game. After a March 1st loss to Calgary, Clarke was suffering from illness and injuries and would miss 6 games over the course of the next 2 weeks, which means he missed a March 14th loss to the Rangers, which was actually teammate Bill Barber's last game, as he would later be forced to retire due to knee problems. Bobby returned the next day, however, against the Boston Bruins with an assist, but at home, hosting the Rangers, he still had a bit left of the Bobby of old. This Rangers team, however, was really good this year, and the Flyers trailed 4-2 in the third period. Clarke never wants to lose any game, but it's gotten personal with the Rangers. 7:21 into the third, Ray Allison gets the puck out to Len Hackburn, who sets up Bobby Clarke. The Spectrum wakes up as the Flyers are within a goal. Just over 3 minutes later, it's crossed into Hackburn, who finds Bobby Clarke. He scores, the game is tied. The Flyers took the lead after a Daryl Stanley goal, and with 2:58 to play, Howe sees Clarke, who sees Allison. He scores a huge comeback win for the Flyers, 6-4. Bobby Clarke, 2 goals, a helper, 3 points, a +3, and is named first star of the game. A huge night, as he needs to remind people when they forget just how good he is. He had an assist each against basement-dwelling division rivals New Jersey and Pittsburgh. Then after wins over the Rangers and Devils, where he plays well, Clarke had 2 assists and was a +3 in a win over the Penguins, 5-3, and named the game's first star. He was rolling to end this season. A March 30th game in New Jersey looked like nothing on paper, really. The Devils had won 17 games all year. Their season is done in a couple days. Little did anyone know the significance of this game. The Flyers led 1-0 in the first when Hackborn got the puck to Marsh, who sets up Bobby from the point. Bobby scores it on Chico Resch, his 17th goal of the year, the 358th goal of his career, and his last. It was on October 30th, 1969, against Eddie Giacomin of the Rangers, where goal number 1 took place nearly 15 years later. Many victimized goalies fell in his wake. Here we are. The Flyers were up 4-0 in the third when Rich Sutter gets the puck to Bobby, who sets up Ron Sutter to go up 5-0. Then on a power play, Clarke controls the situation, sees Dvorak back at the point, who sets up Sittler for the goal. The 852nd and final assist of his career and 1210th point. Assist number 1 was to Lou Morrison. And think of all the greats, especially Barber and McLeish, who are on the receiving end of those superb setups, and legend Darryl Sittler getting the very last setup of Clarke's career, and even all the way down to those minor league call-ups, and the men who didn't play very long, who can actually say Bobby Clarke set up one of their goals. And what a game for Bobby to achieve those final milestones in. A goal, 2 assists, 3 points, and named the game's second star just by teammate Ron Sutter, who also had a 3-point night. Then on April 1st, 1984, Clarke played in his 1144th and final regular season game. It was also the final regular season game he'd play at the place he called home, the Spectrum. It was a 4-1 loss to the Capitals. Clarke was pointless, it was an even 0, and had a shot on goal on goaltender Pat Riggin. The Flyers finished the season with a very good record of 44-26-10 for 98 points, which was 3rd best in the Patrick Division. Only 5 points ahead of the 4th place Rangers, as the Patrick Division was the most competitive in the league this year. But Clarke's season wasn't quite over yet, as now, for the 13th time in his career, it's playoff time. And a new foe awaits them in the opening round. For the first time ever, the Flyers will face the Washington Capitals. This team has spent years building themselves into a contender, but it's finally thanks to GM David Poile, the son of the man who drafted Bobby Clarke, that this has happened. Finally, Coach Brian Murray has whipped this team into shape. They had their best regular season ever, 48-27-5 for 101 points, just 3 points ahead of the Flyers to take second place in the Patrick, despite a very rough start to their season. They did have a pretty weak power play unit, but they had the best penalty kill in the league. They were a very defensive-minded team, even up front. And the reason why they had the best penalty kill in the league was because of this man, Doug Jarvis. A tremendous puck clearer who isn't afraid to work the boards despite his size. He also knew how to cover the best centers in the game and keep them from making big plays, and was arguably one of the best face-off men in the game at this time, winning several key draws in big situations. For his contribution, he was awarded the very same award Clarke won last year, the Selke Trophy, as the league's top defensive forward. And hey, he also contributed offensively with 13 goals, 29 assists for 42 points. He was NHL's resident Iron Man, having played 720 consecutive games from the moment his rookie year began. And a big key factor is that he brings 76 games of playoff experience and 4 Stanley Cup rings as a member of the Montreal Canadiens. Also, their penalty kill and checking core, other than Jarvis, well, they had 4 other players garner Selke votes. One of them was Ben Agnostason. He was very good defensively, but also notched 75 points in 69 games. Glenn Curry gave them size up front. Gaetan Duchesne was great at working the boards. And off-season acquisition, Dave Christian from the Jets is a threat everywhere on the ice as he racked up 81 points. Bobby Gould, who was a finalist for the Selke last season, had another good year despite missing out on voting, while Alan Howarth and Greg Laughlin each hit the 20-goal mark. Brian Erickson got some votes for the Calder Trophy, but this team did have superstars up front, such as center Bob Carpenter and the great future Hall of Famer speedy winger Mike Gartner, who led the team with 40 goals and 45 assists for 85 points. But man, this defensive core is just insane. First, Rod Langway, who won his second straight Norris Trophy as the league's top defenseman, and was also second-team All-Star for the second straight year. In the era where the offensive defenseman is king, Langley proved that being a stay-at-home traditional defender can win hockey games. A towering 6'3" and nearly 220 pounds, he was an imposing presence on the ice who can hurt you and make it known you crossed paths with him and you'll never forget it. He was deemed the Secretary of Defense and was a leader who demanded greatness from others, but himself above all. His take on the captaincy changed the team's fortune in almost an instant when he was traded from Montreal last season. He was also a runner-up for the Hart Trophy as league MVP, showing just how much he truly is valued and means to this club. And joining him was Larry Murphy, who the Caps acquired from the Kings earlier in the season. Murphy is the opposite of Langley. While he did have size, he wasn't a heavy hitter, but he could break up offensive rushes, was able to frustrate top forwards, worked well in the neutral zone, and indeed was a very offensive-minded defenseman with 13 goals, 33 assists for 46 points. He was a big grab for the Caps. And a man who combines many elements that make both Langley and Murphy great, that is the savage himself, Scott Stevens. Another big man who's one of the most vicious hitters in the league and not afraid to show a downright mean streak and was also just plain intimidating. He could also provide offense too, as he had 45 points. He was also a very good plus 26 and tied for 6th in Norris Trophy voting. Rounding out this incredible core, you had the reliable Darren Vicht, Finnish import Timo Blomqvist, and tough Dave Shand. In net, the Caps are the best duo in the league. Literally. The Caps gave up the least amount of goals in the NHL. First, Al Jensen, 25, 13, and 3, tied for 8th best in wins. His 2.92 goals against average, 3rd best in the league. He had an 881 save percentage, and his 4 shutouts were tied for 1st. He was tied for 3rd in Vezina Trophy voting, and registered a vote for the Hart Trophy. And then there's Pat Riggin, 21, 14, and 2, a league-leading 2.66 GAA. His 889 save percentage was 6th best in the league. Tied his teammate for 4 shutouts, leading the league. Tied his teammate for 3rd in Vezina Trophy, and was a second-team All-Star. And together, of course, they received the Jennings Trophy, which replaced the Vezina for least goals against. The team just about has it all, but they have yet to win a playoff series in their history. Well, here we go. Game 1 at the Cap Center. The fans are excited as ever, and it looks great early as 5:21 in. Ray Allison sets up Bobby Clarke for a goal, but it's tied 1-1 after 1. On a power play in the second period, Clarke to Sittler to Sinisalo. It's 2-1 Flyers, but the Caps tied again 2-2 after 2, and the Caps run away with this game in the third and win 4-2 despite a really good game from Bobby Clarke. Game 2, it's tied 1-1 late in the first, and Marsh gets it to Eriksson, and Bobby Clarke scores to give the Flyers a 2-1 lead. His 42nd playoff goal, 119 playoff point, and his last. The Flyers are humiliated 6-2. They're on the verge of being swept. Game 3, back in the Spectrum. The fans are keeping hope in their boys, but it's not enough. In Clark's 136th and final playoff game, the Flyers lose 5-1 and are swept out. Well, despite a very good performance in Game 1, Clarke was merely the rest of the series. And definitely not the way he wanted to go out. Despite 3 points in 3 games, he was also -1, did not have much luck containing the Caps' defensive system. Well, regardless, this is it for our hero. The Caps went on to lose in 5 to, the Islanders, who in turn lost the Stanley Cup to the Edmonton Oilers. In his 15th and final season, Bobby Clarke scored 17 goals, 43 assists for 60 points in 73 games, the second lowest of his career next to his rookie year. And it was quite an array of skaters that he teamed up with this year. Mark Howe is who he clicked with the most, combining for 14 different goals, including 5 assist collaborations, which led all skaters, as he teamed up with 16 different players for Apples. He assisted to Daryl Sittler more times than anyone else, setting Sittler up for 6 of his 27 goals. Clarke set up 18 different players for helpers. And defenseman Thomas Eriksson set up Clarke for 6 of his 17 goals, just above a third. And Clarke was helped out by 15 different players. Bill Barber, Clarke's longtime linemate, who also had his last season, teamed up with him one way or another to produce 12 different goals in their final year together. Clarke did receive some votes for the Selke, which he won last year, coming in 11th with 9 votes. This will also be just the 4th time in 15 seasons that he didn't receive a vote for the Hart Trophy. Yeah, of course it may not have been the way he wanted his career to end, but he was still productive in a lot of ways and still a great captain.
Finished the season with an excellent plus 24, got himself some Selke votes despite another heartbreaking playoff exit, which the playoff appearance, 13 and 15 seasons. That's excellent. But after 15 seasons indeed, he has laced up the skates for the last time. His physical well-being told him it was now the end. In his career, Bobby Clarke scored 358 goals on 97 different goalies in his career. His biggest victim was poor Rogie Vachon, a Hall of Famer, who led in 17 goals from Clarke, with all four teams he played with no less, the Habs, the Kings, where he's best known, as well as his brief stints in Detroit and Boston. Just behind him was longtime goalie Jim Rutherford, who allowed 16 tallies. Gilles Meloche, a very talented goaltender who I mentioned earlier, spent years playing for awful teams, allowed 14 from number 16. Hall of Famer, one of the all-time greats in net, Tony Esposito let Bobby slip by him 12 times, and capping out the top 5, a longtime vet, Gary Edwards, was victimized by Bobby 11 times. Also a fun fact when it comes to goaltenders he has scored on, he has scored on many of his one-time teammates, Doug Favell, Wayne Stephenson, Phil Meyer, and even Bernie Parent during his stint with the Leafs. But Bobby Clarke was far from done with hockey, and far from done with the Flyers. The second Bob McCammon experiment was finished. He was let go as both coach and general manager, and to the shock of many, Bobby Clarke was hired as the team's new general manager. Despite no management experience at any level, well, at least not officially. It's clear, being the face of the franchise for so long, he knew many of the behind-the-scenes happenings at the Flyers, having a close relationship with the Snyder family, and in good with Keith Allen. So perhaps he wasn't in over his head, as many of the media may have thought. Bobby was now, however, under the professional name of Bob Clarke, made an immediate impact on the team, first by hiring a new head coach in Mike Keenan, who had immense success at University Junior B, Junior, and minor league levels, and this new regime led to 2 Stanley Cup final appearances in 3 seasons, plus 3 straight first-place Patrick Division titles. Unfortunately, both times they lost to the Oilers for the Stanley Cup in 85 and 87. In the former, they were dominated in 5 games, and in the latter, they lost a close, heartbreaking 7-game series. Between that and 1986, they suffered a first-round playoff upset elimination at the hands of the Rangers. In 1988, they made the playoffs, but exited in the first round of the Capitals. Mike Keenan was gone after that. Clarke hired former teammate Paul Holmgren to take his place. The Flyers barely finished with a .500 record in 88-89, but made them a miracle run to the conference final before being eliminated by the powerful Habs. In 1989-90, the Flyers finished with their first losing season since Clarke's 3rd year in 1971-72 and missed the playoffs for the first time since that very year. Before that, they had the 4th longest active playoff streak going behind Montreal, Chicago, and Boston. Clarke was relieved of his general manager duties after 6 seasons. Clarke and his scouting team, despite signing tremendous players such as Rick Tocchet, Peter Zezel, and goalie Ron Hextall, who were already in their system, he didn't really build the best foundation for the Flyers' future with some draft picks. Clarke at times also traded for many a good player, but also made many questionable trades. Other than Scott Mellenby, the Flyers didn't really make an overly strong draft pick at this time. Despite that, under Clarke's management, the Flyers in 6 seasons were 256 wins, 177 losses, and 47 ties. Very good. Clarke then took a job as general manager of the fledgling Minnesota North Stars, who were pretty much about to be gutted due to ownership issues and expansion in San Jose. Despite this, however, he, made gold out of straw. In his first year there, acquiring former teammate Brian Propp in the process, the Stars, despite a losing record, made a miracle run to the Stanley Cup Finals in the 1990-91 season. I've covered them on this channel. Before they lost to the Pittsburgh Penguins, however, in 6 games in the Stanley Cup Final. This team was, to be honest, better than they had any right to be. Despite their losing record the following season, again, they made the playoffs. Clarke also drafted 2 key elements of the Stars' future, defenseman Darian Hatcher, who would later become the team captain, and reliable Richard Matvichuk. Despite a mere 59, 81, and 20 record, it wasn't a complete failure. Clarke left the team just after 2 seasons, leaving it in the hands of Bob Gainey, who was the team's coach at the time, and then the team moved to Dallas, and he helped build a winner to the Stanley Cup in 1999. But his alma mater came calling again, as he was hired as Senior Vice President of Hockey Operations for the Philadelphia Flyers in the 1992-93 season. It was at this point he actually started a mentorship-protege relationship with a new generational talent by the name of Eric Lindros. The Flyers were still reeling from Clarke's end days there. They were improving. They had a meh 36-37 and 11 record and missed the playoffs again. But again, Lindros was the future. But then Bob got the chance to build an expansion team, taking on a job as general manager of the Florida Panthers for the 1993-94 season. He did a superb job, better than any expansion team in this or almost any other era. He worked this expansion draft like a pro, taking all-star goalie John Van Beesbrook, veteran grinder and playoff-savvy Brian Skrudlin as the team captain, and a man he drafted in Philadelphia, Scott Mellenby. The Panthers had the best expansion season in NHL history at that point, finishing 33, 34, and 17 for 83 points, just 1 point shy of the final playoff spot. Clarke, however, led the team after one season in a bit of a puzzling move, but set everything in place that helped the Panthers make a miracle run to the Cup in 1996. But again, the allure of his old team came a-calling, and was hired for a second tenure as general manager, this one lasting 12 years. And it had its successes, as like his previous run, instant success. After missing the playoffs for 5 straight seasons since his last, the Flyers won their division, made it all the way to the conference finals in 1995, and they won their division again the next year, and then the year after that made the Stanley Cup, before being swept, however, by Detroit. They made the playoffs in all of the full 11 seasons Bobby Clarke was there as their general manager, and won their division 5 times, and other than their finals appearance, they made the conference final 3 other times. This was thanks in large part to a big, risky trade. They traded to Montreal Mark Recchi, their all-star winger, for John Leclerc, who was not getting much ice time, and Eric Desjardins, a defenseman from Montreal. And it worked! They became huge stars in Philly. Leclerc helped complete the Legion of Doom line with Lindros and Renberg, and they were key components in their success. Desjardins was a very consistent workhorse, always in the thick of things. But the bad came with the good. From 1997-98 to 2001-02, Clarke came under heavy scrutiny for when the Flyers suffered 4 first-round exits in 5 seasons. The way he handled Terry Murray's firing as head coach after their run in 1997, well, let's just say it wasn't mixed with mixed reviews in the media. Some say that Murray lost control of the locker room, others say Clarke was too hasty. In the 1999-2000 season, this was their best stretch during this tenure. The departure of head coach Roger Nielsen, who was diagnosed with cancer, put Clarke under a heavy microscope, painted as cruel the way he handled it. Although Nielsen himself would later state he held no ill will and understood why it had to happen, Clarke didn't help matters by saying Nielsen went, quote, goofy on them, and after the diagnosis, among a few other questionable remarks. He later fired former teammate and friend Bill Barber as coach, and at this point, Flyers had done the unthinkable. They turned against Bobby Clarke. Also, his once strong relationship with Eric Lindros turned very tumultuous, the way he handled Lindros' concussion issues, as well as stripping him of his captaincy during this time. And of course, you also had, on the other side of the coin, Daddy Lindros sticking his nose where it didn't belong, causing a lot of problems. But either way, Clarke stayed on. The Flyers were revived a bit by head coach Ken Hitchcock, culminating in a conference final run in 2004. But by the fall of 06, Clarke was a mess. He was burnt out, he was exhausted, had a lack of desire, and quite frankly, this team was not doing well. He resigned as general manager on October 22, 2006. But let's look at more of the good. Clarke's second tenure totaled a record of 458 wins, 269 losses, and 152 ties and/or OT losses. He made some excellent trades, and at the draft, he seemed to have a much better scouting team than he had in his first run. He drafted Simon Gagne, Jeff Carter, Mike Richards, and Claude Giroux, who all became huge stars in Philadelphia and have had great careers. He also drafted Justin Williams and Patrick Sharp, who sadly never panned out in Philly, but went on to have great success elsewhere. There's no doubt Clarke made many questionable and sometimes outright bad decisions, so I'm not even going to get into the 98 Olympics. And he never did get a Stanley Cup as general manager, but he did a lot of great things too. Overall, as GM, he compiled a record of 806 wins, 561 losses, 236 ties and/or OT losses. As a general manager, totaling 21 seasons, 4 Cup finals, 4 other conference final appearances, 8 division titles, and 18 playoff appearances. Not bad at all. To this day, Clarke is still with the Flyers organization. Again, he never left. As a matter of fact, he took over as Senior VP of Hockey Operations not long after his departure as General Manager, held that title till 2019, and to this day, as of 2024, he is still with the team as a Senior Advisor at the age of 75. But now we go back to his playing career. Bobby Clarke not only had his jersey number retired by the Flyers pretty much immediately in 1984, but in 1987, it was a no-brainer. He was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility. And in 2017, was named one of the top 100 NHL players in league history. Well, indeed, every picture tells a story. This one doesn't tell the full story, but we'll talk about it anyway. 2 Stanley Cups back-to-back in 74-75, 3-time MVP as the Hart Trophy winner once in 73, and then back-to-back in 75 and 76. Once selected as the Pearson Trophy winner for NHLPA Choice for MVP, now known as the Ted Lindsay Award. Winner of the Selke as the league's top defensive forward in 1983. Masterton Trophy recipient for perseverance and dedication, pretty much defines him. First team All-Star twice, second team All-Star twice. League leader in assists twice, and in the top 10 7 other times, totaling 9. He was in the top 10 in league scoring for 7 straight seasons from 71-72 all the way to 77-78. His career plus 507 was actually 3rd all-time when he retired. Now he still sits at 5th. Very good. He also led the league in that category in 1975-76 and was only ever in the minus once, and that was in his rookie year, and it was just a -1. He led the league in shorthanded goals twice. How about 9 straight NHL All-Star Game selections, playing in 8 of them, missing 1 due to injury? Productive on the power play as well. There was very little this man couldn't do on any side of the ice. And aside from winning 2 cups, he appeared in 2 others, and led the Flyers to the North American sports record that still stands, 35 games without a loss in 1979-80. And of course, his famous firsts. This is where he truly was what was most important. He's the first player on an expansion team to reach 100 points in a season. He led the Flyers to be in the first expansion team as a whole to reach 100 points in the standings in a regular season. Led the team, of course, to be the first expansion team to eliminate our original 6 team from the playoffs. And to top it off, led them to be the first expansion team to win the Stanley Cup. What Bobby Clarke did for expansion hockey can never be overstated. He deserves all the credit in the world for putting the Flyers on the map, giving them an identity. And again, making sure people took expansion hockey seriously. And the key word I have said here is lead. He served as team captain, and that C on his sweater wasn't just a fashion statement. He took it very seriously. He led by example and heart and iron will, not to mention ferocity and fearlessness. Served as team captain for 7 seasons before becoming an assistant coach, where he had to relinquish it, then taking the C again for his final 2 seasons. And playoffs? Well, 13 appearances in 15 seasons, 119 points in 136 playoff games. But again, that only tells part of the story. His leadership is what truly led to that success. And of course, his international experience. I cannot overstate this enough. Bobby played a pivotal role in the rise of international competition here in North America in the 1970s, with his controversial yet successful play in the infamous 1972 Summit Series between Canada against the Soviet national team. And of course, we couldn't forget the Flyers frustrating the Red Army Soviet Hockey Club, and the Flyers being the only team to beat them in Super Series 76. Then, several months later, captaining Team Canada to win the first Canada Cup in the fall of 1976. Clarke was selected in a losing cause, however, as a member of the NHL All-Stars in Challenge Cup 79 against the Soviets, and walked away with a bronze medal in the 1982 Ice Hockey World Championships. And to sum it up, his health almost prevented all of this. A diabetic who scouts pretty much ignored because of that became one of the all-time greats. Heart is the name of the game. It may be cliche, but it's true. But it was a game Bobby played every day. Total it, 1,144 games played. 15 seasons from 1969 to 84. 358 goals. 852 assists for 1,210 points. Still, as of 2024, the Flyers' all-time leading scorer, all-time assist leader, and has played the most games in a Flyer uniform. And alas, that does it for our extensive look at the face of the Flyers, Bobby Clarke. I hope you enjoyed it. What other players would you like to see us cover on this channel? Well, leave a suggestion in the comments. Like and share the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notifications bell, and until next time, I'll see ya!